Chapter 1737. The Sword Essence Emperor instantly panicked at the sight of Enlin. It defended itself against the attacks of the Golden Soul Swords as it roared into the air. Spirit Maiden, I'm in the middle of a trial. How could you allow Enlin to come in and disturb me? Please expel him. Enlin approached the Sword Essence Emperor with a cold smile on his face. Stop struggling. The Spirit Maiden intentionally let me in, and you want her to expel me? The Sword Essence Emperor shuddered upon hearing this, and an expression of despair appeared on its face. The gate had already been closed again, so there was no way for it to escape from the trial. It had initially used its buff mystic technique to reach the White Tiger statue and complete the trial, but now Enlin had appeared. There were trial attacks in front of it, and Enlin was attacking it from behind. Even 3 Sword Essence Emperors wouldn't be able to survive this. What do I do? What do I do? The Sword Essence Emperor gritted its teeth, and a few more holes were punctured into its massive body by the soul swords. It was currently in a buff state, and its body was several thousand feet tall, as if it were a bloodthirsty fiend god. However, there were already tens of thousands of holes on its body. Furthermore, it was still in the process of recovering, and there were still tens of thousands of holes on its body that hadn't healed yet. Who knew how much blood energy it had expended? If this continued, it was going to die for sure. Was it going to die here after all? The Sword Essence Emperor was grief-stricken. Enlin made his way toward the Sword Essence Emperor with a proud expression on his face. However, right at this moment, all of the Golden Soul Swords suddenly faltered. Everyone fell silent. The Sword Essence Emperor faltered upon seeing this. Enlin also wore a bewildered expression. They were then greeted by the sight of all of the Golden Soul Swords in the air turning toward Enlin. In that instant, Enlin was struck by a sense of peril, as if he had been targeted by the Grim Reaper. A sense of foreboding welled up in Enlin's heart. The Spirit Maiden suddenly appeared in the air above the White Tiger trial ground. She wore a flowing blue dress, and her pristine white feet stepped through the air with excitement and brutality on her flawless face. Sword Essence Emperor, don't you want to kill Enlin? I'll help you. From now on, all the attacks will be directed at Enlin. This is your best and last chance. Make good use of it. The Sword Essence Emperor sucked in a breath of cold air. It had survived from the brink of death. Enlin was shocked. I helped you get rid of your annoying enemy, and this is how you repay me? You're too powerful. All of the power of the trial is focused on you, and that's in conjunction with the Sword Essence Emperor's combat prowess. Only then will the dog-eat-dog situation be fully unleashed. Both of you are going to die here. The Spirit Maiden replied in a truthful manner. Ha ha! Enlin, weren't you laughing happily just now? The Sword Essence Emperor waved a hand, and 18 golden celestial swords hovered in the air. You'll soon experience just how terrifying the power of the trial is. With the power of the trial and my power, I'll show you what despair is. The tables had turned, and the Sword Essence Great Emperor, who had been forced into a dead end, finally had a chance to transfer its despair onto its enemy, which made it feel extremely wonderful. This would be the start of its counterattack and counterattack. The Spirit Maiden was also very elated, and a seductive smile appeared on her face. What a foolish human. So what if you're powerful? Enlin, you're going to die here today because of me, oh ho ho. Countless Golden Soul Swords instantly flew toward Enlin, slicing through the space around them. Before the Soul Swords had even reached him, Enlin was already feeling a sharp pain shoot through his skin and consciousness. Not only were they imbued with extremely powerful metal-type power, but they were also imbued with the true intent of the Spirit Patriarch, as well as a hint of the God of Creation stage aura. These Soul Swords were very powerful. Enlin's lips curled up slightly. Now this is getting interesting. I'm about to ignite. A black divine halo suddenly appeared above his head, and a paramount aura erupted forth. In that instant, he was the master of all metal, and all metal-type powers were under Enlin's control. Metal power activate. Whoosh! Invisible ripples instantly proliferated throughout heaven and earth. The golden soul sword that was hurtling toward Enlin like a roaring dragon instantly froze in midair. Enlin tore through space and passed through countless golden soul swords before flying toward the Sword Essence Emperor at an extremely fast speed. A layer of inky black divine light enshrouded the evil-slaying sword in his hand, making it extremely sharp. The power of the metal god was maximized. At this moment, he had become the master of the supreme laws. The Spirit Maiden was dumbstruck again. The Sword Essence Emperor was also dumbstruck. It had promised to help it deal with Enlin during the White Tiger trial, but now that all of the soul swords had been frozen, how was it supposed to help? In reality, Enlin could even freeze the Sword Essence Emperor's swords in place, but he decided to give the Sword Essence Emperor a dignified death. Enlin was already upon it. As expected of a top-tier powerful being, the Sword Essence Emperor was able to unleash an extremely powerful 18 golden divine swords that were imbued with extremely powerful auras toward Enlin. In its buff state, its power was comparable to that of a mighty figure at the Tao integration pinnacle stage. Enlin's evil-slaying sword swept through the air like a black crescent moon, upon which all of the celestial swords were sliced in half amid a series of crisp cracks. Invincible sharpness, invincible heavenly might. The Sword Essence Emperor stared at Enlin, who had shattered all of its celestial swords with a single sword strike before continuing onward, and it was unable to repress the shock in its heart. At this moment, Enlin's second sword strike slashed through the air. Whoosh! The crimson protective soul power around the Sword Essence Emperor's body was sliced open by the sword, and its body was sliced cleanly in half from the waist. Blood was gushing forth from the incision. Thump! The two halves of its body fell to the ground, and the residual sword intent was still ravaging its body in a frenzy. Not bad. You were able to block 2 of my sword strikes. Enlin withdrew his sword. Sword Essence Emperor, our Void Spirit tribe has severely underestimated your combat prowess. The Sword Essence Emperor had unleashed a mystic technique that was comparable to a mighty figure at the Tao integration pinnacle stage, but it was still unable to block a single attack from Enlin. A sly smile appeared on Enlin's face as he looked down at the Sword Essence Emperor. Seeing as you're using the power of the White Tiger trial against me, I'll return the favor by using the power of the Vermilion Bird trial against you. What? The Sword Essence Emperor shuddered. At this moment, a golden sun hung high in the sky, warping the space around it. The great holy flame had appeared. A sense of horror welled up in the Sword Essence Emperor's heart again. In particular, its consciousness was already trembling uncontrollably. The power of the Vermilion Bird trial? Could it be that you've already passed the Vermilion Bird trial? That's obvious. Enlin snapped his fingers. The golden sun behind him crashed down upon the Sword Essence Emperor. The Sword Essence Emperor howled in agony as it was scorched by the terrifying flames. It had thought that it would be able to turn the tables, but it didn't think that both the White Tiger trial and its own power would be so vulnerable in the face of Enlin. Enlin's invincible power had truly plunged it into despair. The great sun's sacred fire climbed up its divine soul, and it swore that it would not rest until it was completely incinerated. In the end, the Sword Essence Emperor was reduced to ashes by the terrifying Great Holy Flame. Boom! Heaven and earth tremored again. Heaven and earth mourned the death of a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. The Void Spirit Tribe super mighty figure, the Sword Essence Emperor, had also fallen. Thus, all of the Void Spirit Tribe Tao integration stage super mighty figures who had entered the Spirit Patriarch Palace had fallen. The golden divine halo above Enlin's head glowed with a scintillating light, and all of the golden soul swords that had been immobilized surged into the divine halo like a tidal wave, as if they were nourishing it. Soon, all of the golden soul swords had been sucked dry by Enlin, and they didn't even have any chance to resist. Burp! Unlin burped within the empty white tiger trial space. He turned toward the dumbstruck spirit maiden with a smile. Thank you for your hospitality. Chapter 1738. Thank you for your hospitality? This sentence was like a heavy blow that caused the spirit maiden's body to tremble. The spirit maiden wiped the non-existent tears from her eyes and sobbed. Who wants to entertain you? Give me back the soul power essence from my trial. The soul power essence has already been absorbed by my consciousness. I won't be able to expel it even if you let me. Unlin splayed his hands open with a helpless expression. It was this sentence again, it was this sentence again. The spirit maiden gritted her teeth, but there was nothing she could do. Her weapon was the power from the trial. Now that the soul power from the white tiger trial had been sucked dry by Unlin, what else could she do? She was in despair. Master, I'm so sorry. The spirit maiden looked up at the sky with a dejected expression. Why is the first person to enter the spirit patriarch palace so powerful? I tried very hard to kill him, but I couldn't do anything to him. Unlin turned to the spirit maiden with a curious expression. Wasn't the first person to enter the spirit patriarch palace that three-headed wolf? The spirit maiden sneered. That stupid dog didn't even dare to enter the soul power passageway. What makes it worthy? Only those who pass through the soul power passageway are recognized by the spirit patriarch palace. Only they have the right to be killed by me, the spirit maiden said proudly. Unlin didn't know why the spirit maiden was so proud. His consciousness was still digesting the soul power that he had absorbed. After his consciousness reached a new level, it was as if the threshold had been unlocked, allowing him to absorb soul power of a higher level and continue to grow. This was a huge win for him. I've passed the white tiger trial now, right? Hurry up and give me the inheritance, Unlin said. The spirit maiden flew toward the white tiger statue with a resentful expression. Since she couldn't kill Unlin, she would keep her promise and give Unlin the core inheritance. She was a trustworthy person. The woman patted the white tiger statue's head lightly, and the white tiger statue began to crack. Boom! The statue exploded. An extremely ferocious projection of a white tiger appeared in the air. Roar! The white tiger let loose an enraged roar, and its majestic might shook everyone's hearts. The huge white tiger with golden patterns on its back and a peculiar divine mark on its forehead stared at Unlin with a pair of eyes filled with supreme dignity. Unparalleled ferocity, extreme dominance, and an extremely pure power of metal, these were the characteristics of the white tiger. Just by looking at him, Unlin felt an extreme sense of danger. You are the one who passed my trial? The white tiger stared at Unlin. Its voice reverberated through the air, causing people to feel the pressure on them to multiply. That's me. Unlin nodded. I really didn't expect that my trial would be passed by a human. White Tiger's face was filled with eagerness and provocation. A top human expert? How long has it been since a new top-tier powerful being has appeared? The inheritance was meant for the Void Spirit tribe, but a human beat us to it. Unlin understood what the White Tiger was trying to say. What? The Spirit Patriarch didn't say that living beings outside of the Void Spirit tribe weren't allowed to accept the inheritance. But I don't like humans, the White Tiger said in an indifferent voice. This is the Spirit Patriarch's palace, so you have to follow the Spirit Patriarch's rules, Unlin said. Roa ha ha ha. The White Tiger seemed to have heard an extremely hilarious joke, and it laughed so hard that all of its antennae stood up. This is indeed the Spirit Patriarch's palace, but the soul-slaying sword is the core inheritance, so I have absolute authority. Also, the divine mark on the White Tiger's forehead flashed, and its body became more and more substantial as it looked at Unlin. Who do you think you are? How dare you be dissatisfied with my decision? Unlin was astonished. Were all ruins nowadays so unique? Not only did the artifact spirit want to eat him, not only did the vermilion bird want to eat him, But now this white tiger wanted to renege on its promise? Furthermore, the most important thing was that it dared to flex in front of him? Boom! A metal divine halo appeared above Enlin's head again. The white tiger phantom suddenly felt a vast and boundless heavenly might, as if the person standing in front of it was a supreme god. Its expression shifted drastically, but it didn't even have a chance to react before a black palm came crashing down upon its body, causing it to fall to the ground in a U-shape. Boom! The earth tremored violently. The white tiger was slammed into the ground by Enlin's palm. Enlin stomped down onto the white tiger's head. "Who do you think you are? How dare you clamor in front of me?" Enlin asked in a cold voice as he stood atop the white tiger. Roar! The white tiger flared up with rage. It had never been looked down upon like this by any living being. Even though this was only a wisp of its divine intent, it couldn't allow itself to be humiliated like this. A series of golden soul swords appeared in the air before stabbing toward Enlin in a frenzy. Enlin chuckled coldly as the black divine halo above his head erupted with a brilliant light. The paramount laws of nature instantly took effect on the golden soul swords, upon which the soul swords abruptly changed directions before piercing through the white tiger's body. The white tiger howled with anguish. Roar! How is this possible? What kind of power is this? How are you able to control my power? The white tiger stared at Enlin with astonishment etched on its face. White tiger, are you really one of the 4 holy beasts? You don't even know who Enlin is? Enlin pursed his lips with a cold smile. Didn't you ask me who I am? Listen up, the one who will kill you is Enlin, sword immortal. A massive, inky black soul power whale suddenly began to appear behind him. It opened its gargantuan mouth, which was completely disproportionate to its body, and chomped down upon the white tiger. No! The white tiger's expression shifted drastically as it roared in shock and horror. In the next instant, the soul power whale swallowed the white tiger's divine intent in an extremely practiced and efficient manner. Burp! The soul power whale burped with satisfaction before disappearing on the spot. The wisp of the white tiger's divine intent, one of the 4 holy beasts, had finally been swallowed by Enlin. In for a penny, in for a pound. I've already swallowed the vermilion bird, so swallowing the white tiger shouldn't be a problem, right, spirit maiden? Enlin turned toward the woman in the blue dress, who was staring blankly at the scene unfolding before her. The spirit maiden clasped a hand over her chest, and her heart was suddenly throbbing with pain. It was swallowed again. So be it if you swallowed all of the soul power essence in the trial, but why didn't you spare even the holy beast? An exasperated expression also appeared on Enlin's face. I had no choice. They provoked me first, and I didn't want to fight them either. The spirit maiden knew that Enlin was right. The holy beasts had provoked Enlin first on both occasions. When the holy beasts had tried to attack Enlin, the spirit maiden had been very excited and expectant, waiting for the holy beasts to tear Enlin to shreds. But what happened in the end? Both holy beasts were swallowed by Enlin. Incredible! Terrifying, even! How could there be such a freakishly talented person in this world? Boom! A huge amount of information and true intent exploded in Enlin's mind. After using the little whale's engulfment spell technique to swallow the white tiger's divine intent, his powerful consciousness began to digest the white tiger's divine intent. Now, he had perfectly inherited the white tiger's soul power golden sword spell technique, which was an extremely domineering spiritual attack spell technique. Not only that, but his sea of vital energy underwent another transformation. A white egg suddenly appeared above his surging sea of vital energy. Chapter 1739. Enlin was astonished to see this. An egg suddenly appeared in his sea of vital energy. This was a big deal. How did another strange thing sneak into his sea of vital energy? Enlin turned his attention to the egg in his sea of vital energy. This egg was about the same height as in Kirin, and its surface was extremely smooth and pristine white. However, upon closer inspection, one could see intricate golden patterns on its surface. What kind of egg is this? Why did it appear in my sea of vital energy? Anlin was perplexed. Could it have something to do with the white tiger? Anlin recalled that this was the case only after he swallowed the white tiger. If he had swallowed the white tiger to obtain the egg, then why didn't he have the egg after swallowing the vermilion bird? Anlin could sense that there seemed to be a strange life being nurtured within the egg. In order to avoid a similar tragedy as his fourth brother, he immediately ordered Kirin, the holy flame vermilion bird, and the little whale to stay away from the egg and not harm it. After taking care of all of this, he heaved a sigh of relief before turning his attention back to the Spirit Patriarch Palace. The Spirit Maiden had already fallen into a state of deep self-doubt and self-blame after being dealt a heavy blow by Anlin. Spirit Maiden, there are still 2 more trials that you haven't passed. Let's continue, Anlin said. The Spirit Maiden shuddered, and she stared at Anlin with shock and horror in her blue eyes. You still want to continue? Aren't you going to kill me? I'm giving you a chance. Anlin spoke with a smile. The Spirit Maiden felt as if a sword had been stabbed into her heart, and she clasped a hand over her heaving chest. No, I don't want to kill you anymore. I'm scared of you. If you continue like this, you're going to destroy the entire Spirit Patriarch Palace. Please get the F***ck out of here. Anlin chuckled coldly. Anlin, can go wherever I want. You don't have the right to stand in my way. Kill me if you dare. The veins on the Spirit Maiden's forehead bulged with rage, but she couldn't do anything to Anlin. She had never hated someone as much as she did at this moment. A strange feeling of being conquered and bullied welled up in her heart, making her tremble. You can continue, but you have to promise me that you won't absorb any more soul power essence or devour the holy beast's essential divine intent. Is that okay? The Spirit Maiden spoke to Anlin in a negotiating tone for the first time. No. Anlin directly refused. You. The Spirit Maiden's eyes widened. Don't push me too far. Come on, beat me to death if you don't like it. Anlin laughed. The Spirit Maiden was enraged to the point of tears. This person was so unreasonable. Anlin ignored the woman and walked out of the White Tiger Trials gate with a straight face. He arrived outside the Black Tortoise Trials gate and shouted, I want to challenge the Black Tortoise Trial now. Please open the gate. No. You can't do this. How can you be so evil? The Spirit Maiden shook her head relentlessly. She wanted to refuse Anlin's request, but her body began to move involuntarily. That's right, she had no right to deprive trial takers of their right to participate in the trial. Disobeying the Spirit Patriarch would be equivalent to betraying her, so she could not do something like that. I'm in so much despair. I really want to kill you. The Spirit Maiden gritted her teeth. Anlin was naturally not going to hold back against an artifact spirit that was constantly trying to kill him. Stop King dawdling. If you want to kill me, then show me what you've got. Hurry up and open the gate. The Spirit Maiden pursed her lips and waved a hand to activate the Black Tortoise Trial. Rumble. The Black Tortoise Trial had already slain 2 Dao integration stage super mighty figures. Anlin strode into the Black Tortoise Trial with a fearless expression. Ha ha! Die! I'm going to kill you right now. A crazed expression appeared on the Spirit Maiden's face. Boundless gravitational force crashed down upon him. Anlin's body shuddered violently as his bones creaked under boundless pressure. If some return to void stage mighty figures were here, they would definitely be crushed into mincemeat. Even powerful Dao integration stage super mighty figures like the Dark Soul Emperor and the Bright Soul Snake were instantly immobilized. This was only the beginning. The thick and solid black tortoise shell had already fallen from the sky. I'll crush you to death. The black tortoise shell, which was riddled with sharp divine spikes, crashed down from the sky with crushing force, as if it were going to crush all living beings to a pulp. Interesting. A smile appeared on Enlin's face as an earthy divine halo suddenly appeared above his head. Whoosh! A paramount might began to proliferate forth. Power of the mountain god, activate! Enlin pointed a finger upward, and the paramount power of laws erupted forth. Gravitational reversal, normal. A peculiar energy fluctuation imbued with the paramount power of laws erupted forth, as if it were a heavenly decree. The terrifying gravitational force instantly disappeared in that instant. The spirit maiden's crazed expression froze on her face, and her mouth gaped open as she murmured to herself, "This technique again? Why is it this technique again? What kind of power is this? Where did this freak come from?" The spirit maiden could already envision what was going to happen next. Sure enough, Enlin abruptly swung his hammer toward the sky, and the monstrous power of the mountain was imbued with the will to destroy all things, instantly shattering the black tortoise shell. There was more than one black tortoise shell in the Xian Wu trial. The spirit maiden waved her hands in a frenzy, hurling one black tortoise shell after another toward Enlin, only for Enlin to shatter all of them with a single punch. The indestructible black tortoise shell in the eyes of Tao integration stage super mighty figures couldn't even last a single strike from Enlin. The spirit maiden experienced the true meaning of despair once again. At this moment, the power of the mountain god's divine halo quickly rotated to absorb all of the soul power essence into its body. The power of Enlin's consciousness swelled explosively once again, and a portion of it flowed into his sea of vital energy to nourish the strange egg within his sea of vital energy. Soon, all of the black tortoise shells had been destroyed by Enlin before being absorbed. The black tortoise trial grounds became empty again. Spirit Maiden, it's a pity that you've failed again. But that's alright, you still have one more chance. Enlin chuckled. But for now, activate the black tortoise inheritance for me. The spirit maiden gritted her teeth. Before I activate the black tortoise inheritance, can you explain to me why you've already summoned your whale? Haha. Enlin looked at the soul power black whale behind him, and an awkward yet polite smile appeared on his face. I was worried that the black tortoise would attack me like those two holy beasts, so I summoned the whale to protect myself. Self-protection? Self-protection, my F***ck. You're trying to swallow the black tortoise. The spirit maiden's breathing accelerated, but she still managed to calm herself down and force a smile onto her face. Then promise me that as long as the black tortoise doesn't attack you, you won't attack it. Enlin immediately shook his head upon hearing this. No. Why should I only retaliate when the holy beasts attack me? I've already been bullied twice by the holy beasts, and I can't let that tragedy repeat itself. Offense is the best defense, so I'm going to attack this time. The Spirit Maiden. Chapter 1740. The Spirit Maiden knew that Enlin was a punishment sent by the heavens to punish her. What the F***ck was this? Was Enlin a tragedy? It was clearly the two holy beasts that were swallowed by him. Enlin didn't suffer any losses at all. Where did he get the cheek to say that offense was the best defense? The Spirit Maiden had always thought that she was the most despicable person in her palace. After all, she had to resort to all sorts of despicable methods to kill a trial taker. However, never would she have thought that someone even more despicable than her would resort to all sorts of despicable methods to swallow all of the holy beasts. What the F***ck was this? He was turning the tables on her. However, she couldn't do anything about it. She could only watch as Enlin jumped around and did whatever he wanted. How despairing! How helpless! Hurry up! Don't just stand there. Where's my Xian Wu inheritance? Enlin urged. The Spirit Maiden wore a bitter expression. You can't do this. It's not right for you to destroy things like this. Let me ask you, did the Spirit Patriarch stipulate that the soul power essence can't be eaten? Enlin asked. The Spirit Maiden was an honest person, and she shook her head honestly. Then let me ask you another question. Did the Spirit Patriarch stipulate that the divine intents of the four holy beasts can't be eaten? Unlin continued. The spirit maiden was on the verge of tears as she continued to shake her head. Unlin splayed his hands. The spirit patriarch didn't say that I can't eat them. What the *CK are you talking about? The spirit maiden broke down. You're bullying me. Come and kill me then. Unlin chuckled. The spirit maiden had nothing left to live for. Slap. She pressed a hand against her chest. The Xian Wu statue exploded. A gargantuan Xian Wu began to appear on the ground. Its snakehead was enshrouded in layers of dark mystic water, and it appeared eerie and sinister. Its tough shell glowed with green divine light, and it was as heavy as a boundless mountain. Its tail swayed gently, and a golden candle flame lit up, illuminating heaven and earth. You are the one who passed my trial? The Xian Wu's lantern-like eyes stared intently at Unlin. Yes, I am. Unlin cupped his fists and said respectfully. The spirit maiden was extremely nervous, and she was afraid that some mishap might occur again. Senior Xian Wu, Unlin is an extremely talented cultivator. Back when he challenged the Xian Wu trial, I was extremely amazed by his performance. He is definitely worthy of this inheritance. The meaning behind the spirit maiden's words was very clear. Hurry up and give him the inheritance. The white tiger and vermilion bird's bloody lesson is right in front of us. Senior Black Tortoise, please be smart. However, Xian Wu, who was just about to bestow the inheritance upon Unlin, suddenly paused upon hearing the spirit maiden's words. He looked at Unlin with interest. Oh, little brat, you've received such a high evaluation from the spirit maiden. I'm quite curious about your power now. Why don't you show me a thing or two? Once I'm satisfied, I'll bestow you the core inheritance. Sure, I'll show you a few moves. Unlin's lips curled up slightly. The spirit maiden seemed to have realized something, and she immediately extended a hand. No. At this moment, the whale behind Unlin opened its cavernous mouth and abruptly pounced toward Xian Wu. A black vortex appeared in its mouth, sucking in all things, and the gargantuan Xian Wu was instantly sucked into the air. How dare you? Never would Xian Wu have thought that Unlin would dare to attack it. It also opened its cavernous mouth, and dark water sprayed forth. The water was like the blackest ink in the world, and it was capable of transforming everything it came into contact with into water of absolute darkness. However, when the netherworld mysterious water was sprayed into the whale's mouth, it was completely absorbed by the whale. Xian Wu was given a fright upon seeing this, and its massive body was instantly enshrouded in a layer of translucent, green soul power armor. Xian Wu soul armor. In the instant that the armor materialized, Xian Wu's body was fixed in midair by the suction force. This armor doesn't look simple at all. It possesses a unique property of immortality, and it was able to block my most powerful engulfment spell technique with just a wisp of its essential divine intent. Unlin's eyes lit up, but he had no intention of stopping. His soul power surged, and the power of his consciousness erupted forth with even greater ferocity. The suction force from the black whale's mouth became even more terrifying. Crack, crack, crack. In the end, the Xian Wu soul armor was pulverized by the terrifying soul power. The gargantuan Xian Wu howled with anguish and cursed with rage before being swallowed alive by the black whale. History was always shockingly similar. Burp. The soul power whale burped with satisfaction again. Unlin looked on silently at the scenes unfolding before him before turning to the empty trial space with a smile. Are you satisfied with what I've just displayed, Senior Xian Wu? Of course, no one replied to his question. Only the spirit maiden's expression was filled with despair. It's been swallowed. Xian Wu has also been swallowed. Humph, you've already passed the trial, but you're still acting all high and mighty and forcing me to show you what I've got. Do you really think a mere wisp of your divine intent is the boss? Unlin pursed his lips. You're the boss. You're the boss. The spirit maiden clasped a hand over her chest with a grief-stricken expression. At this moment, Unlin's mind exploded again. A huge amount of information and true intent flowed into his mind like a massive river. His consciousness had clearly digested Xian Wu's essential divine intent and absorbed its inheritance. Unlin had obtained another holy beast core inheritance, Xian Wu soul armor. This was an indestructible armor constructed from one's consciousness, and this was the core defensive spell technique of holy beast Xian Wu. At the same time, another change occurred in his sea of vital energy. Another egg slowly floated up from the seabed before floating above his sea of vital energy, as if it were nurturing something. This egg was about the same size as the previous one, and it was completely green with intricate black patterns on its surface, creating an extremely beautiful sight to behold. Unlin was astonished. He finally knew that these eggs really did have something to do with holy beasts. So what were these eggs going to hatch into? Unlin was both curious and a little uneasy. Please don't tell me it's going to be something strange. Wait, no, it was already strange enough that 2 eggs had appeared in his sea of vital energy. Let's go to the Azure Dragon inheritance, Spirit Maiden, Unlin said after calming himself down. The Spirit Maiden floated over to Unlin and lowered her head with a beseeching expression on her face. Unlin, you've vented your anger now, so can you spare the Azure Dragon's life for the sake of the Spirit Palace? Unlin was rooted to the spot as he stared at the docile woman with a hint of surprise in his eyes. So the Spirit Maiden had already been ravaged to this extent? How could she speak to him in such a gentle and subservient tone? Unlin thought about it for a moment. He had never tried accepting a holy beast's inheritance before. If he kept swallowing it like a brainless glutton, it wouldn't suit his noble status. Thus he nodded. All right, as long as Holy Beast Azure Dragon doesn't provoke me, I won't do anything. The Spirit Maiden finally felt reassured after receiving Unlin's promise. She was going to quickly and cleanly end this trial and send this god of plague away. Chapter 1741. The Spirit Maiden opened the gate to the Azure Dragon trial. Unlin swaggered in. I'm going to start the trial now, the Spirit Maiden said in a low voice. Unlin, this is probably a fake Spirit Maiden. Where's her killing intent? Where's her rage? All right, let's begin, Unlin said solemnly. Immediately afterward, a dark soul dragon suddenly appeared and roared as it pounced toward Unlin. Unlin was extremely excited, and he swatted it with his palm. Bam! The dark soul dragon exploded from the palm strike. Congratulations, Unlin. You've successfully passed the trial, the Spirit Maiden said with a dainty smile. Unlin. Wait a minute, what's going on? I passed just like that? Unlin hadn't even used any strength, and he had already passed without even feeling anything? Who was he trying to bully? That's right, you've passed. The Spirit Maiden nodded. In any case, she couldn't kill Unlin. Rather than letting him absorb all of the Dark Soul Dragon's soul power, she might as well let him pass and scram after receiving the inheritance. Unlin clearly knew what the Spirit Maiden was thinking, and he sighed. You're already scared after just 3 strikes? The artifact spirit of the Spirit Patriarch Palace is actually so weak and easy to bully? What a disgrace to the Spirit Patriarch. The Spirit Maiden took a deep breath and forced a smile onto her face. Do you want the inheritance or not? Just tell me. Yes, of course I want it. Unlin nodded upon seeing that his goading had failed. The Spirit Maiden flew over and patted the Azure Dragon statue's head. The statue cracked open and exploded. An Azure Eastern Dragon appeared in midair. Its body was covered in a dense layer of divine light, and its 9 claws glowed with boundless might. Its golden eyes were imbued with a surging dragon might, and the azure divine seal on its forehead struck fear into the hearts of onlookers. At the same time, an immortal aura unique to holy beasts also proliferated outward. Howl! A cry that contained the might of a dragon resounded out, and it seemed to have transcended the world. It was illusory, profound, and revealed the aura of a king. Unlin looked at the azure dragon in front of him, and sensed its unique aura. He didn't know why, but it felt strangely familiar. "You're the human who passed my trial?" "Interesting, truly interesting." The azure dragon looked down at Enlin condescendingly. Its 2 dragon whiskers rose slightly as it laughed heartily. "The spirit patriarch's inheritance and my spell technique have been obtained by a human. Just thinking about it makes me feel amused." Enlin blinked his eyes. This holy beast seemed to be easier to talk to. "Come, human. Since you've successfully summoned me, I shall fulfill your wish." The azure dragon's fingertips began to emit a green light of inheritance. The spirit maiden heaved a huge sigh of relief upon seeing this, and a smile appeared on her face. "Success. I've finally succeeded this time. The spirit patriarch hall has finally avoided the terrifying situation of being completely empty." Enlin also stepped forward. He was quite curious about what it would feel like to receive an inheritance normally. All of a sudden, he felt a stabbing pain in his mind, and his consciousness surged explosively. Immediately afterward, boundless black light burst forth from the ancient ring in his hand. A gargantuan dragon head suddenly appeared behind Enlin, and its eyes, which were like 2 miniature suns, opened. "This smell, what a familiar smell!" A hoarse and deep voice sounded from behind him. The dragon's voice reverberated through the air, and the hair on Enlin's body instantly stood on end. Even his breathing began to quicken. The azure dragon's expression changed drastically. You are..." The black dragon head behind Enlin chortled with glee. "I am you, foolish divine intent." It suddenly opened its mouth and pounced toward the azure dragon. It bit down on the azure dragon's head at an extremely fast speed, and with a loud crack, it bit off the dragon's head and swallowed it. Then, it swallowed the dragon's body, tail, and finally, the entire dragon was swallowed into its stomach. I feel much better after eating my own divine intent. The day of my full recovery is getting closer and closer." The black dragon smacked its lips with elation. There seems to be other types of soul power?" It suddenly exclaimed in surprise again. It opened its mouth, and the entire azure dragon trial suddenly shook. Countless traps were destroyed by it, and a supreme dragon's might carried absolute will, as if it could command the power of all dragons. Then, under Enlin's astonished gaze, countless shadow soul dragons were sucked out by the black dragon, and all of them were swallowed into its mouth. Only when all the soul power was sucked out did it burp in satisfaction. The black dragon turned its gaze toward Enlin. "Human brat, I've reaped great rewards thanks to you. I owe you another favor, and I'll return it in the future. Keep up the good work, I have high hopes for you." Roar, roar, roar. The black dragon let out a joyful and mysterious laugh. The ring on Enlin's hand flashed, and the black dragon turned into a black light again, leaping into Enlin's consciousness. Enlin suddenly realized that the black dragon was really the azure dragon of the 4 sacred beasts. No wonder he felt a sense of familiarity when the azure dragon appeared. It was the black dragon's aura on his body. As for why the azure dragon had turned black, he didn't get a chance to ask. As for the azure dragon in his body, it looked like it was time to find some time to deal with it. He had initially thought that the black dragon's divine intent was in the ring. However, after everything that had happened, such as crippling the ghost tribe mighty figure with a roar, swallowing the blue dragon, swallowing a divine tool constructed from the skeleton of a true dragon, and now, it directly claimed that it was the azure dragon and swallowed the azure dragon's divine intent. If Enlin still thought that this was merely the black dragon's divine intent, then he would be an idiot. This was clearly a special form of the holy beast, the azure dragon. It ate it. It actually ate it again. A sorrowful voice suddenly sounded. The spirit maiden sat paralyzed on the ground and stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before her. "It's gone, it's all gone. The soul power of the 4 sacred beasts has been sucked dry, and the holy beast's divine intent has also been eaten. The spirit patriarch palace is completely empty, and only Enlin is running amok. Tears of remorse flowed down the spirit maiden's face. She shouldn't have opened that door in the first place. Liar, you're a liar. You said you wouldn't eat it anymore, but it was eaten dry again. The spirit maiden knelt on the ground and wiped away her tears with one hand. What should I do now? The spirit patriarch palace doesn't even have a holy beast to chat with anymore. Hey, you can't blame me this time. What you saw was the azure dragon eating itself. It has nothing to do with me. Enlin was also in despair. The azure dragon had been swallowed, so where was his inheritance? Was it really okay for the black dragon to do this? Just as this thought flashed through his mind, an explosion erupted in his mind. A burst of extremely fundamental information and true intent flowed into his mind. Enlin's eyes lit up. He had finally obtained the azure dragon's core inheritance, the Shadow Soul Dragon. This was a spell technique that could exhaust one's consciousness. It was a perfect fusion of the spirit patriarch's and the azure dragon's understanding of the divine sense. It could summon a limitless number of Shadow Soul Dragons to tear the opponent to death. Not only that, but a black egg also appeared in his sea of vital energy. There were intricate red patterns on its surface, and it looked mysterious and beautiful. Not a loss at all. Enlin was already used to having eggs in his sea of vital energy. Having one more didn't make a difference. He could just wait for them to slowly hatch. The spirit maiden saw the elated and satisfied smile on Enlin's face, and she felt even more like a failure. She was weak, pitiful, and helpless. On the very first day of the Spirit Patriarch Palace's opening, she had already squandered all of the Spirit Patriarch's asset. How useless and heart-wrenching was this! It was also at this moment that a warm palm pressed down on the Spirit Maiden's head and gently rubbed it. The Spirit Maiden raised her beautiful eyes, and what she saw was Enlin's warm smile. Spirit Maiden, it's not that you're incompetent, and it's not that you're too weak either. It's that I'm too powerful. This isn't your fault. Enlin consoled her in a warm voice. The Spirit Maiden pursed her lips tightly. He still didn't forget to flex a little when consoling someone? Are there any other trials in this Spirit Patriarch Palace? Enlin asked with a hint of reluctance in his voice. The Spirit Maiden abruptly stood up with grief and indignation on her face. Are the 4 holy beasts unable to satisfy you? Do you want to have me too? Enlin's eyes lit up. Sure. The Spirit Maiden. Chapter 1742. You're a toad lusting after swan meat, the Spirit Maiden said angrily. Can a toad pass the trials of 4 holy beasts and take all the inheritances in the Spirit Patriarch Palace? Enlin didn't back down and retorted. The Spirit Maiden choked upon hearing this, and her face flushed red. In any case, even if I die and live alone in the Spirit Patriarch Palace forever, or even perish together with the Spirit Patriarch Palace, I will never acknowledge you as my master. The Spirit Maiden pointed a finger at Enlin's nose and said angrily. Enlin blinked. Why did this sound so familiar? It was also at this moment that the space around them suddenly began to tremor. A gate of light suddenly appeared in the middle of the vast palace. Immediately afterward, a majestic and invigorating voice sounded. Congratulations, trial taker. You have obtained the core inheritances of 4 holy beasts in a row. The hidden trial of the Spirit Patriarch is now activated. Trial taker is welcome to participate. Enlin was astonished upon hearing this. Had he obtained a new achievement and unlocked a hidden mission? The Spirit Maiden was rooted to the spot. The Spirit Patriarch. This is the voice of the Spirit Patriarch. Who would have thought that he would leave behind an invisible restriction in the palace? The Spirit Maiden was extremely excited, as if she had discovered a new continent. Enlin stepped into the gate of light without any hesitation. Wait for me. The Spirit Maiden followed behind Enlin and also flew into the gate of light. A powerful spatial power swept toward them. Enlin realized that this was a small mystic realm within the Spirit Patriarch Palace. Soon, the space around them transformed, and a strange place filled with jagged rocks and vibrant soul power appeared before their eyes. There were harmless spirit bodies floating around, and they sized up Unlin curiously. They flew toward the spirit maiden in an intimate manner as soon as she appeared. A spirit body with a mushroom-like head and a deep-fried dough stick spread open its arms, and a rose appeared. It was confessing its love to the spirit maiden. A spirit body that resembled a white ball even snuck over and tried to kiss the spirit maiden's cheek. However, it was mercilessly slapped away by the spirit maiden. Unlin was quite intrigued. It looked like the spirit maiden was also a goddess among the Void Spirit tribe. It seemed like the Void Spirit tribe didn't choose their partners based on looks. Instead, they only looked at the attributes of their spirit bodies. This was also why the Sword Essence Emperor, the Chaotic Demon Ball, and the other Tao Integration Stage super mighty figures had all expressed their approval toward the Spirit Maiden when she had transformed into a sinister monster. Now that he thought about it, the Void Spirit tribe was the most romantic and shameless tribe. Yes, choosing a mate only depends on your inner self, only your interesting soul. As for appearance? Sorry, Void Spirit tribe living beings had no fixed appearance. 10,000 Void Spirit tribe living beings had 10,000 strange appearances. The Spirit Maiden's spirit body attributes were most likely quite good. All of the Void Spirit tribe living beings in the mystic realm were rushing toward her and professing their love. However, the Void Spirit tribe living beings were quickly intimidated by her violent personality and restrained themselves. There are so many weak Void Spirit tribe living beings here, and there are also many undulating hills, but they're all a mess. Where is the Spirit Patriarch, and where is the trial taking place? Unlin was perplexed. The Spirit Maiden closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she pointed a slender finger in a certain direction. I can sense the Spirit Patriarch's aura. It's in that direction. Unlin immediately set off upon hearing this. After walking for about a dozen kilometers, he discovered an ordinary-looking cave atop a mundane-looking hill. The mighty Spirit Patriarch buried himself in this cave? Unlin finally sensed a peculiar aura upon arriving here. It was extremely faint, but it was impossible to ignore as the soul power emanating from it made even Unlin's consciousness tremble. How can you imagine how low-key my master is? The Spirit Maiden raised her chin. Unlin rolled his eyes. What's with that expression? Is this something to be proud of? Master regards money and fame as dirt, and he dedicated his entire life to the research of spirit bodies. He is the undisputed #1 being in the Void Spirit tribe, and he paved a path of hope for billions of Void Spirit tribe living beings to reach the Great Tao. The Void Spirit tribe can't find a second such a mighty being. The Spirit Maiden's eyes were filled with admiration and yearning as she talked about the Spirit Patriarch. Such a mighty being who stood aloof from worldly affairs. Why did he die? Unlin asked the question that had been weighing on his mind for a long time. The Spirit Maiden faltered slightly upon hearing this. Then, a hint of grief appeared on her face, and she shook her head. I can't tell you. The Spirit Patriarch personally told me that he can only tell me the true reason for his death. Tell me the true reason? The Spirit Patriarch is already dead. Can I still tell him? Unlin couldn't help but feel a little expectant. He walked into the cave and continued forward for about 100 meters. Then, he saw a red barrier that isolated and protected him from the outside world. This barrier was of a very high rank. It seemed to be able to scan Unlin's body. After ascertaining that Unlin's consciousness possessed a few unique auras, the barrier suddenly opened up to welcome him. Unlin walked in, and he was greeted by the sight of a large laboratory. There were all kinds of strange instruments on the laboratory, some of which were extremely intricate and high-end. They could slice and peel, reconstruct life forms, impact particles, and reconstruct space. There were all kinds of functions, and it was comparable to what he had seen in Bai Ling's research room. Some of the instruments were extremely strange. They looked like ancient cauldrons, chains, and ghostly totem poles. There were countless curses and strange energy engraved on them. And Lin also saw a series of spirit monsters that were still stored in transparent containers. They were enshrouded by some kind of special energy, and they still possessed signs of life. However, they were all in a deep slumber. He also saw the spirit patriarch's body. It was a delicate and pretty skeleton. The skeleton was only about the size of a child. It had the skull of a dragon, the wings of a phoenix, and the body of a human. From its bone structure, it had 4 arms and 2 legs, and they were all human. As for why Lin was certain that this was the spirit patriarch, it was because this little skeleton was releasing a soul power that made even Lin's heart palpitate. It was dead, but it didn't die. The spirit patriarch sat silently on a laboratory chair. In front of him was a workbench. It was as if it were using its decaying voice to shout, "I, the spirit patriarch, will die in this laboratory even if I die." As expected of a research maniac, this identity definitely wasn't just for show. Which supreme being didn't have a majestic and imposing statue or a vast and majestic mausoleum after they died? However, this spirit patriarch didn't stick to any of these conventions. Its body sat silently in this small laboratory. It was so simple and so simple. It was as if time had frozen at the moment of its death. It was also a vivid depiction of its life's pursuit. And Lin was moved, but his attention was still focused on the inheritance. He turned his gaze toward a pitch-black stone slab beside the spirit patriarch. A series of white words were written densely on the slab. And Lin was instantly dumbfounded when he saw the largest words at the top of the black stone slab. The words were written on the slab. "Do you want to obtain my inheritance? Do you want to obtain wealth, fame, and power? Then answer the questions. Answer all 100 questions correctly, and I'll give everything to you." Chapter 1743. And Lin never would have thought that the hidden trial in the Spirit Patriarch Palace was to answer questions. However, he didn't panic. Instead, he was pleasantly surprised. In terms of intelligence and knowledge, he was quite confident. No matter what the question was, he would do it. Thus, Lin looked at the 100 questions. Question 1. How many units of spirit condensation impact can little yellow source spirit be increased by after extracting anriki acid from a stalk of dark soul grass and mixing it with dumb dragon grass according to the spirit void ratio? A. 202b, 281c, 396d, 438. Lin. He took a deep breath and looked at the second question. Question 2. Demon Soul General of the Spirit Nurturing Pinnacle Stage ingesting 89 milligrams of this divine grass, 23 Wind Spirit Flower, and 108 milligrams of demonic eye powder. A. 909 degrees B. 8,648 degrees Celsius, 430 degrees D. No increase in Lin. And Lin's flesh crawled as he looked at the third question. Question 3. A high-energy spirit particle collides with a soul particle at a speed of 180,000 meters per second. What level of particle oscillation can be triggered? A. Level 3B, Level 5C, Level 9D, Unshaken. And Lin. Question 4. Soul-piercing Alitao demon used a speed faster than the star dragon to launch a concentrated attack on the fluorescent stone. After receiving 582,976 electromagnetic soul damage, the soul rose and fell by 99.798%. Then, what kind of soul dream emission phenomenon can be created? A. Avalon Fall. B. Heaven's Fissure Dust. C. Langmeng Robe Attack. D. Innate Shadow. And Lin. He looked at the questions one by one. Finally, Lin finished reading all the questions after a while. Then, he was shocked to find that he didn't know how to answer a single question. No, it should be said that he didn't know how to answer a single one of the 100 questions. Holy sh*t, what kind of weird questions are these? He didn't even know how to answer a single question, let alone 100. Thankfully, these questions were all multiple-choice questions, so he still had room to guess. However, the probability of guessing 100 questions correctly was 1/4 to the power of 100. Even if he used up all the luck of several lifetimes, he might not be able to do it, right? He had originally thought that the Spirit Patriarch's trial was very considerate and cultured, but now that he thought about it, it was practically demonic. Unlin took a deep breath before turning toward the Spirit Maiden. "Can you do these questions?" The Spirit Maiden also looked at the questions left behind by the Spirit Patriarch. A reminiscent expression appeared on her face as she murmured to herself, "These questions are actually the results of the Spirit Patriarch's experiments when he was still alive." "They aren't the most difficult questions," Unlin said excitedly. "In other words, you know how to do it?" "I only know how to answer 8 questions," the Spirit Maiden replied honestly. Unlin, the artifact spirit of the Spirit Patriarch Palace, only knew how to answer 8 questions? As if she knew what Unlin was thinking, the Spirit Maiden continued, "These questions will become more and more difficult. I can only answer the first 8 questions at the moment, but I can guarantee that I'll get all of them correct. As for the following questions, they already involved many fields of research. Although I had some clues, it was just a clue. If I carefully research and experiment according to the clues and calculate for a few decades, I should have a chance to get it right." Unlin's mouth gaped open. A few decades? He was going to scram back to the Tai Chu continent in a dozen or so days. Where would he find the time to stay here for a few decades? Once the gate to the spirit realm closed, who knew when it would open again? Unlin's eyes were filled with defeat, as if he had lost all of his faith. He finally tasted the terror of being dominated by perverted questions. The Spirit Maiden crossed her arms before her chest and delivered a fatal blow to Unlin. She chuckled coldly. "Besides, the Spirit Patriarch's inheritance naturally has to be obtained with your own abilities. Even if I know how to do it, I won't teach you. Just give up, ha ha ha." Unlin was enraged upon hearing the Spirit Maiden's mockery. However, he couldn't do anything even if he was angry. He still had to endure the Spirit Maiden's mockery. This was probably the tragedy of being a bad student. Unlin looked around the laboratory to see if there were any answers that he could refer to. Of course, he didn't find anything either. Just as he was about to throw caution to the wind and walk over to the black stone slab beside the Spirit Patriarch's body, his storage ring suddenly flashed with a red light. Unlin sensed a powerful intent. He didn't stop it and allowed the thing inside to move on its own. A ball of red light shot out from the storage ring. It was a red, crystal-clear skeleton man. The Spirit Maiden was given a fright. "What is this thing?" Unlin was also given a fright. "Shui Mengmeng, why did you come out?" That's right, this skeleton was none other than the Blood Patriarch's corpse, Shui Mengmeng, who had been subdued by Unlin. Shui Mengmeng moved closer to the Spirit Patriarch. There was a melancholic look in its eyes. I suddenly sensed a familiar aura. Who would have thought that he would still die? You know the Spirit Patriarch? Unlin asked in surprise. Shui Mengmeng nodded. Not only did I know him, but we were also good friends. Unlin drew a sharp intake of breath. The Spirit Maiden's body trembled. Then, she shook her head. That's impossible. The Spirit Patriarch only had one good friend, and that was the Blood Patriarch. How could you, Shui Mengmeng, be his good friend? What nonsense! Shui Mengmeng came to a sudden realization. You're right. The Blood Patriarch was the Spirit Patriarch's good friend. What does that have to do with me? Unlin suddenly had a bold idea. He patted Shui Mengmeng's round skull and pointed to the questions on the black stone slab. Do you know how to solve these questions? Heh, you're asking a skeleton to solve these questions? Unlin, are you desperate? The Spirit Maiden couldn't help but burst into laughter upon seeing this. Shui Mengmeng raised its head and looked at the questions on the black stone slab. A dark red flame ignited in its empty eye socket. Silence. After a while. These questions are so difficult, Shui Mengmeng said. Unlin was disappointed. The spirit maiden chuckled coldly. I'll need a few minutes to finish all of them, Xue Mingming said. Spirit maiden. Unlin. Impossible. Do you think I'm stupid? How can you finish all of these questions in a few minutes? The spirit maiden instantly exploded with disbelief and indignation. She would need at least a few decades to finish all of these questions. However, this Xue Mingming that had popped out of nowhere was saying that he could finish all of them in a few minutes? Wasn't this looking down on her and making her look like a stupid C***T? Anlin was very excited. Hurry up and do it then. Xue Mingming really did start counting in its mind. 6 minutes later. I'm done. I can guarantee that all of the answers are accurate, Xue Mingming said. Anlin was ecstatic. Xue Mingming is awesome. Let's go fill in the answers. The spirit maiden chuckled coldly. Heh, if you can really finish all of the questions, then I'll twist my head off for you to play with. Chapter 1744. Anlin looked at the spirit maiden and narrowed his eyes. Remember what you said. If I can answer all 100 questions correctly, you'll twist your head off for me to play with. The spirit maiden straightened her back and shook her chest. I, the spirit maiden, am a man of my word. Why would I be afraid of something that is completely impossible? But what if you can't answer all 100 questions correctly? The spirit maiden smiled sinisterly. If you lose and you don't lose anything, then this bet is off. Fine, I'll pay the price. Anlin nodded. If I can't answer all 100 questions correctly, then Xue Mingming will twist its head off for you to play with. Xue Mingming. The spirit maiden was astonished. How could there be such a shameless person in this world? However, upon closer inspection, Xue Mingming's skull was indeed quite adorable. The spirit maiden really wanted to play with it, so she accepted this bet. In order to prevent its head from being twisted off, Xue Mingming's expression became even more serious. Choose B for the first question, C for the second question, C for the third question, A for the fourth question, C for the fifth question. Xue Mingming listed out the answers one by one. Anlin condensed an answer pen with his soul power and ticked off the answers on the black stone slab. The spirit maiden was a little unsettled. She knew how to answer the first 8 questions, and the answers to the first 8 questions were exactly the same as the answers she had received. No way, how is this possible? This is impossible. The spirit maiden shook her head as she looked at Anlin answering the questions rapidly. Not only was her body trembling, but even her breathing had also quickened. Suddenly, the fear of being dominated by Anlin welled up in her heart again. That feeling was so familiar. Not only were the 4 holy beasts unable to punish him, but even the spirit patriarch was unable to punish him now? No. The questions became more and more difficult as they progressed. He would definitely make mistakes later on. Very soon, Anlin had completed all the questions under Xue Mingming's guidance. Everyone suddenly fell silent. Regardless of whether it was the spirit maiden, Xue Mingming, or Anlin, all of them stared intently at the black stone slab. Whoosh, the black stone slab suddenly lit up. Following that, several large red words appeared on the blackboard. Congratulations to the trial taker, all the answers are correct. Do you wish to accept the inheritance now? The vast soul power aura emanating from the black stone slab proved that this was indeed the spirit patriarch's power. This was also the spirit patriarch's true decision. Ha ha, it's really all correct? Xue Mingming, you're the best. I'm so grateful to you. Anlin excitedly hugged the blood-red crystal skeleton beside him and praised loudly. Master, if you really want to thank me, then give me a few drops of your delicious blood, Xue Mingming said as it smacked its lips. That's a good request. Anlin immediately cut his hand to draw blood. Xue Mingming was extremely satisfied. The spirit maiden stood off to the side and stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before her eyes. She was still muttering, "Impossible, how is this possible? How could the spirit patriarch's question be solved in such a short time? What's so strange about that?" Xue Mingming replied. The spirit patriarch has basically discussed all of the questions on the black stone slab with me. I've also participated in most of his experiment. Isn't it normal for me to be able to solve these questions? That's impossible. Apart from the blood patriarch, my master wouldn't have conducted any experiments with other living beings. As she spoke, the spirit maiden's pupils suddenly contracted as if she had thought of something. Her mouth gaped open in shock as she stared at Xue Mengmeng. Could it be you are? No. I'm not the blood patriarch, I'm Xue Mengmeng. The spirit maiden was speechless. She didn't seem to have told Enlin who this blood skeleton was. Forget it. Seeing as you've been dealt such a pitiful blow, I'll explain it to you. Xue Mengmeng was formed from the blood patriarch's corpse after it became sentient. It possesses a portion of the blood patriarch's power and memories, Enlin explained. Even though the spirit maiden had already guessed this, she was still stunned into a daze. It really was the blood patriarch. It really was the blood patriarch. Xue Mengmeng was the blood patriarch. Everything made sense now. No wonder the skeleton said that he was the blood patriarch's good friend. No wonder the skeleton was able to answer all the questions at an unfathomable speed. The more the spirit maiden thought about this, the more she blushed with shame. At the time, she had praised the blood patriarch in front of the blood patriarch, then belittled Xue Mengmeng. Just thinking about it made her want to crawl into a hole. Sigh, she had lost to Enlin again. However, who would have thought that the handsome and elegant man from back then would now become a strange skeleton? Why are you looking at me like that? I'll say it again. I'm Xue Mengmeng, not the blood patriarch in your eyes. Xue Mengmeng felt like it was being discriminated against, and it spoke angrily. The spirit maiden replied with an "oh," clearly not believing him. That's right, spirit maiden, do you still remember our bet? Enlin asked with a chuckle. The spirit maiden's slender body trembled, and tears instantly welled up in her eyes. She had lost the bet. Next, she would have to twist her head off for Enlin to play with. You. That doesn't count. You clearly didn't do it with your own strength. You found someone else to take the test for you. This is cheating. The spirit maiden resisted stubbornly. Even the spirit patriarch has acknowledged my results. Enlin pointed at the large red words on the black stone slab. Could it be that you're even more authoritative than the spirit patriarch? Could it be that you want to take the test for him? No. The spirit maiden's heart trembled, and she shook her head incessantly. It was clear that she had received a heavy blow. Respecting the spirit patriarch's decision was something that she had to do. Otherwise, it would be a great disrespect to the spirit patriarch. She couldn't bear this kind of accusation. Enlin is my master. My strength is my master's strength. The questions that I answered are the questions that my master answered, Xue Mengmeng said. Critical strike spirit maiden X2. Enlin placed his hands on his hips, and he said in a righteous manner, I used my own strength to find someone to take the test for me. If you're so capable, why don't you find someone from the blood patriarch to take the test for you? Can you do it? Critical strike spirit maiden X3. The spirit maiden's HP bar was already empty, and tears streamed down her face. Fine, I'll let you play to your heart's content. Tears welled up in the spirit maiden's eyes, and there was an expression of humiliation on her face. She used her hand as a knife and slashed toward her neck, slicing it open. Take it. The spirit maiden held onto her spirit body's head as she spoke with hatred in her voice. Enlin accepted the spirit maiden's spirit body head and held it in his hands. The spirit maiden's head was cool to the touch, and her delicate and pretty face was cool and moist. There were even drops of spirit liquid tears on her face. He couldn't help but pinch the spirit maiden's cheek. It was soft and delicate. After the spirit body had taken on a corporeal form, it felt quite good to the touch. It felt more substantial than jelly. The spirit maiden wore an expression of humiliation, and tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. Just as she thought that she was going to be toyed with by Enlin forever, she discovered that her head had been pressed back onto her neck. A large, warm hand patted her head. The handsome male in front of her rubbed the spirit maiden's head and smiled gently. "All right, I've played enough. I'll return it to its rightful owner now." Huh! The spirit maiden had initially thought that she would be toyed with by Enlin for the rest of her life. However, who would have thought that Enlin would return her head to her so quickly? It looked like he was just giving her a way out of this embarrassing situation. The spirit maiden's heart was stirred slightly. Chapter 1745. Enlin was indeed very infuriating. He had no moral integrity and no lower limit. However, the spirit maiden couldn't forget the gentle smile on his face when he pressed her head back into her body. In this moment of extreme humiliation, it was as if a ray of sunlight had instantly shone into her heart and warmed her entire body. Then, all right, I've fulfilled my promise to our bet. The spirit maiden used her soul power to heal the wound on her neck. She glanced at Enlin before shifting her gaze elsewhere. Her voice was slightly stiff. "Of course, spirit maiden. You're a person who keeps her promises." Enlin nodded with a smile. The spirit maiden pursed her lips and didn't reply. She only saw that Enlin didn't look as repulsive as before. Enlin turned his gaze toward the black stone slab again. He used his soul power pen to tick the word yes on the "Do you accept the spirit patriarch's inheritance?" rumble. The black stone slab suddenly trembled violently. The spirit ancestor, who had been quietly sitting in the laboratory chair, suddenly released a ball of blue light from the top of his head. It fused with the black stone slab and caused the black stone slab to explode. Enlin felt a sense of pressure that made even his heart palpitate in fear. A being with the head of a dragon, 4 arms, 2 legs, and a pair of phoenix wings appeared in the center of the black stone slab's explosion. Its entire body was a deep blue, and it seemed as if there was an endless amount of soul power within it. It was clear that this being was the paramount god of the void spirit realm, the spirit patriarch. "Congratulations, trial taker. You've successfully passed my trial. You have the right to inherit my most important inheritance." The spirit patriarch was like a man who had just woken up. His voice was lazy, and every syllable was dragged out. Furthermore, there was no emotion in it. "Junior Enlin thanks the spirit patriarch." Enlin bowed slightly. He knew that the spirit before him was a wisp of the spirit patriarch's remnant divine intent. It had its own consciousness, but it only existed to pass everything to its inheritor. "Master." The spirit maiden looked at the figure before her, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Spirit maiden, you've successfully completed the final mission and found a qualified inheritor for me. From now on, you're free." The spirit patriarch's expression softened as he looked at the spirit maiden. The spirit maiden wiped away her tears and nodded lightly. The spirit patriarch then turned his gaze toward Xue Mengmeng. He couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. "Sigh. Brother Xue, you've become like this. You're half dead." Xue Mengmeng scratched its skull as it glanced at the spirit patriarch's corpse, which had also been reduced to a skeleton. It sighed and said, "Brother spirit, don't talk about me. At least I'm slightly better than you. My old body can still move, but yours can't." The spirit patriarch glared at Xue Mengmeng. "Why do I feel like beating someone up? Do you want to fight for it one last time?" "There won't be another chance in the future," Xue Mengmeng said eagerly. Sure enough, the spirit patriarch's eyes flashed, but they quickly dimmed. "Forget it, I'm not going to argue with you anymore. Back then, you and I had been arguing for tens of thousands of years over which is the most important source of life, the divine sense or the blood. Haven't we fought enough? I still have to save some strength for my successor." "All right." Xue Mengmeng nodded. "Speaking of which, you were the one who helped me with my questions, right?" the spirit ancestor suddenly asked. Xue Mengmeng and Enlin's expressions froze at the same time, and their hearts involuntarily began to beat faster. It was as if they had been caught by the main examiner when they were asking for a substitute examiner. "Haha, Don't be nervous. The spirit patriarch gazed at Enlin meaningfully. The fact that Brother Shui was willing to help you with your questions proves that you're extraordinary. This is also a fated opportunity between the two of us. Thus, I'm actually very happy that you're able to accept my inheritance. Upon hearing this, Enlin and Shui Mengmeng both heaved a heavy sigh of relief. The spirit maiden was also completely convinced. The spirit patriarch's words were exactly the same as Enlin's shameless quibble. As expected, she was wrong. Enlin also developed a good impression of the spirit patriarch. This supreme being was quite understanding and reasonable. He didn't have the transcendent aura that other supreme beings had, which made it difficult for them to communicate with others. Instead, he was very down-to-earth and amiable, like a diligent researcher. Even his smile was so simple and unadorned. That's right, my inheritance is divided into two types. The first is my research on the divine sense. I dare say that no one on the Tai Chu continent can surpass me in this area. A hint of pride finally appeared on the spirit patriarch's face when he talked about the divine sense. The second is the power of the divine sense that I've left here. Once you absorb it, the power of your divine sense will undergo a true transformation. Moreover, you'll be able to peek into the true Tao of the divine sense. Enlin drooled as he listened, and he nodded incessantly. He knew that this was definitely an inheritance that all living beings in the Void Spirit tribe yearned for even in their dreams. However, I have a presumptuous request, the spirit patriarch continued. Enlin said, Please speak, senior. Enlin, you're not a soul cultivator, so you don't really need my knowledge on the divine sense. However, Big Brother Shui is different. Right now, he only has a physical body and consciousness, but he doesn't have a true divine sense. I want to pass this inheritance to the Blood Patriarch so that he can use my knowledge to reconstruct his physical body and divine sense and become a true living being. The Spirit Patriarch said. Enlin was stunned. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that the Spirit Patriarch would make such a request. Brother Spirit. Shuemingming's mouth gaped open. He didn't know what expression to make. All right, I agree. Enlin didn't think too much about it, and he immediately agreed. Upon hearing this, the Spirit Maiden, Shuemingming, and the Spirit Patriarch were all slightly taken aback. They were very surprised that Enlin would agree so quickly. Ha ha! Big Brother Shui, you've done the right thing. You've followed the right person. The Spirit Patriarch seemed to be very happy, and there was a carefree smile on his face. Of course I've followed the right person. Enlin is the most perfect living being I've ever seen in my life. Shuemingming licked its lips as it spoke. Oh? I didn't think you'd be able to give such an evaluation of a living being. The Spirit Patriarch was a little surprised. He looked deeply at Enlin again, but he didn't see anything special about him. He then pointed a finger at Enlin and said, Come, accept my power. The inheritance officially began. Enlin could feel an unparalleled soul power surging into his consciousness from his forehead. It was indescribably vast and pure. This soul power was the purest and most powerful soul power in the world. He saw an unprecedented path. His consciousness could also become a Tao. His consciousness could also become a complete life. His consciousness could also become so powerful. Enlin's consciousness trembled violently as it swallowed the power that was surging toward him. Your consciousness is already very powerful to begin with. The Spirit Patriarch's eyes lit up. Furthermore, it's in the midst of a transformation. In fact, it's already completed the transformation. So be it, I'll help you reach a higher level. Boom! Enlin's body shuddered. A semi-transparent clone of Enlin was slapped out by the Spirit Patriarch. Chapter 1746. Enlin had been split into two Enlins, one of which was extremely realistic and lifelike. The other was a semi-transparent blue consciousness that hovered in mid-air. Both Enlins were dumbstruck. This was a very strange feeling. It was as if he had two bodies at the same time. He was clearly the same person, but he had two completely different visions and senses. And Lin's physical body was still in place, and he had all of his senses and power. However, his consciousness had already left his body. This wasn't a simple manifestation of his divine sense. Instead, his soul had truly left his body and possessed a unique consciousness vision. And Lin's physical body was similar to his normal state, except that he couldn't unleash any consciousness spell technique. His consciousness had fallen into a deep slumber, and his combat prowess wasn't affected. And Lin's consciousness was in a very peculiar state. He was extremely sensitive to soul power and auras, as well as the auras of living beings. Furthermore, he was floating in midair, as if he had broken free of all shackles and transcended beyond all things. The world around him was also different. It was more vibrant, and Lin's consciousness easily pierced through the cave and flew into the sky to survey this mystic realm. This mystic realm was originally very strange and out of place, but now it was as beautiful as a celestial realm. There was a series of silk-like auras fluttering through the air, as if celestial maidens were dancing in the sky, creating a vibrant scene. All types of living beings' consciousnesses shimmered like the most beautiful stars, making Lin feel as if he had been plunged into a sea of stars. Not only that, but there was one more important thing. Lin's divine sense body was brimming with power at this moment. Lin discovered that in his current state, he could easily crush a void spirit tribe living being's consciousness with the power of his consciousness. It was as if he were the ruler of this entire world. The power that Lin's consciousness could unleash was extremely fearsome, and it was different from Lin's physical body. What did this mean? This meant that Lin could unleash twice as much power as before. In fact, when Lin's physical body and Lin's divine soul joined forces, they could even produce an effect that was greater than two. Lin was extremely excited. The rewards he had reaped this time were far greater than he had imagined. This was a complete metamorphosis of the level of life. His spirit and body were separated, and he could do two things at the same time. This was truly a great metamorphosis. After a round in the sky, Lin's soul returned to the side of Lin's physical body, and then carefully fused with it. His brain buzzed for a moment, and Lin once again became the original Lin. Huff, huff, huff. He panted heavily, his eyes filled with excitement and exhaustion. Clearly, he had experienced a very special cultivation experience. Upon seeing this, the Spirit Patriarch laughed and said, "It's all right. It's always like this for the first time. Although it feels great, it's also very tiring. In the future, when your divine soul leaves your body, adjust your posture and breathing rhythm. You'll get used to it after a few more times." Lin benefited greatly from the Spirit Patriarch's words, and he bowed respectfully again. Junior Lin thanks the Spirit Patriarch for bestowing this inheritance upon me. I will definitely remember this great kindness for the rest of my life. All right. The Spirit Patriarch waved his hand. You don't have to be so courteous with me. Just take good care of the Spirit Maiden and Brother Blood in the future. Lin take care of me? Why would I need him to take care of me? The Spirit Maiden said angrily. Stop messing around. The inheritance has been completed perfectly, and you're free from now on. The Spirit Patriarch chuckled. The Spirit Maiden still needs Lin to take care of her when she returns to the Tai Chu continent. From now on, you can acknowledge Lin as your master, or you can acknowledge other living beings as your masters. In any case, take good care of yourself. Master. The Spirit Maiden's eyes reddened at the thought that the Spirit Patriarch was about to leave her forever. The Spirit Patriarch didn't seem to be used to parting ways between life and death. He turned his gaze toward the Blood Patriarch, and a white glow flickered on his fingertip. Brother Blood, you didn't expect this, did you? In the end, you still have to rely on my knowledge for your rebirth. Shui Mengmeng clicked its teeth and humphed coldly. Look at how smug you are. It's still uncertain whether your knowledge will be useful or not. The Spirit Patriarch smiled and didn't say anything. He flapped his phoenix wings lightly, and his body began to float toward Xue Mengmeng. A dazzling white glow burst forth from the Spirit Patriarch's fingertip, and he tapped it on Xue Mengmeng's forehead. Take this. This is all of my knowledge, my everything. Boom! A huge amount of information was enveloped by soul power, and it flowed into Xue Mengmeng's body in an extremely domineering manner. Nothing in this world could compare to the radiance of this light in that instant. Enlin and the Spirit Maiden were both stunned. They were also subdued by the supreme soul power in that instant. The inheritance this time came quickly, and it left just as quickly. Very quickly, the radiance dimmed, and the Spirit Patriarch's body also became increasingly illusory. Xue Mengmeng's expression was a little sluggish, as if it hadn't recovered from the shock of the Spirit Patriarch's vast amount of knowledge. It was familiar with most of this knowledge. Most of it had been researched together with the Spirit Patriarch. For some reason, it thought back to the time when the two of them were in the laboratory together. They could argue for days and nights over a single experiment, and they could also be happy for a long time over a single breakthrough. They could drink and chat merrily, and they could also be disappointed for a long time because of a single failure. The time they spent together was always tranquil. There weren't any spectacular experiences, but it was pure and beautiful. It flowed for a long time like water, until it finally became an eternal river and became a part of their lives. Every time it thought back to that time, it couldn't help but smile. How is it? Have you been inspired by my knowledge? The Spirit Patriarch asked with a smile. Xue Mengmeng nodded with a smile. Very much. This is the first time I've felt that you're so reliable. The Spirit Patriarch's body became more and more illusory, and it was almost invisible. His soul power was also like a candle in the wind, about to be extinguished at any moment and completely disappear from this world. Xue Mengmeng opened its mouth, and it wanted to say some words of gratitude. However, it swallowed the words when they reached its throat. With their relationship, there was no need for such words of gratitude. My dear friend, this is the last thing I can do for you. I hope that you can reforge your physical body and divine soul, and obtain a new life. The Spirit Patriarch's voice was as faint as smoke. Xue Mengmeng nodded. Goodbye, my dear friend. Goodbye, the Spirit Patriarch said. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Time seemed to have returned to a long, long time ago. The dragon-headed youth opened his sleepy eyes, and he suddenly discovered that his face had been secretly smeared with blood by the white-robed youth. The white-robed youth still wore a despicable smile on his face. The dragon-headed youth was so angry that he grabbed a bottle of solution and chased after the white-robed youth. The two of them chased each other from the laboratory to the Spirit Realm Mountain. They played and laughed along the way, and they were brimming with youthful energy. It was as if the future still had infinite possibilities. After walking for a lifetime, he suddenly looked back and woke up as a youth. The Spirit Patriarch had disappeared. In other words, he had completely died. Xue Mengmeng walked over to the lifeless corpse that was sitting on the chair. It wanted to put the corpse away, but its hand paused in midair. It suddenly gave up on that idea. Forget it. Let's do it here. It's pretty good, Xue Mengmeng said with a smile. Chapter 1747. Xue Mengmeng returned to Enlin's storage ring. It needed time to digest the Spirit Patriarch's knowledge. Enlin did not disturb it. This Xue Mengmeng was both the blood ancestor and not the blood ancestor at the same time. It kept saying that it was a brand new life, but its karma with the blood ancestor was not clear. As he conversed with the Spirit Patriarch, he put himself in the shoes of the blood patriarch. No one would believe that Xue Mengmeng had nothing to do with the blood ancestor. When Xue Mengmeng reconstructed its physical body and divine soul, perhaps a true blood ancestor would be born. However, Enlin didn't mind. He was confident that no matter what Xue Mengmeng became, Shui Mengmeng would never leave him. Spirit Maiden, let's leave this place, Enlin said. The Spirit Maiden bowed deeply toward the Spirit Patriarch's body. Only then did she float toward the exit with Enlin. What are your plans for the future? Enlin asked again. What's your plan? The Spirit Maiden was momentarily dazed. Only then did she realize that her final mission had been completed. All of the inheritances in this Spirit Patriarch Palace had been taken away by Enlin. In other words, she had lost her job and was officially unemployed. The 4 holy beasts were gone, and the Spirit Patriarch was also gone. All that was left was an empty palace, as well as her, who was likely to spend countless years in solitude. Didn't the Spirit Patriarch tell you that you can return to the Tai Chu continent now? If you don't have anywhere else to go, you can come to our 4-9 Immortal sect. I'm the sect leader. If you want to come to the 4-9 Immortal sect, I can just say the word. Enlin patted his chest. Why would I go there? I don't know anyone. The Spirit Maiden's brows furrowed, and she appeared to be a little dejected. Heh! Enlin slapped the back of the Spirit Maiden's head and said, Don't you recognize me? I'm the sect leader of the 4-9 Immortal sect, the most powerful sect in the entire 4-9 Immortal sect. Isn't it enough for you to have the most powerful backer? The Spirit Maiden sneered. How can someone like you be the sect leader? I became the sect master based on my personal charisma. Enlin reached out and pinched the Spirit Maiden's cheek. A warm smile appeared on his face as he said, What do you think? Rent is free, water and electricity are all included. You can move in with your luggage. The Spirit Maiden looked at Enlin's smiling face, and she recalled the warm smile on his face when he had returned her head to her. She then slapped his hand away before a nonchalant smile appeared on her face. Sure, I want to see what kind of sect would allow someone like you to become their sect leader. Thus, the Spirit Maiden accepted Enlin's invitation. The two of them made their way to the exit of the Spirit Patriarch Palace. All of the Void Spirit Tribe mighty figures who had been spying on the palace from afar immediately scattered in fright at the sight of Enlin. The Spirit Maiden looked at the palace, which was as massive as an ancient beast, and she waved her hand lightly. The palace began to tremor violently before shrinking at an extremely fast rate. In the blink of an eye, the gargantuan Spirit Patriarch Palace had shrunk to the size of a palm and landed in the Spirit Maiden's hand. I'll leave this Spirit Patriarch Palace to you. Please take good care of it. The Spirit Maiden handed the palm-sized Spirit Patriarch Palace to Enlin. Enlin was a little surprised to discover that the energy fluctuations emanating from the Spirit Patriarch Palace were comparable to pinnacle divine tools. He accepted the Spirit Patriarch Palace and nodded with a solemn expression. Don't worry, as long as the palace lives, I live. If the palace dies, I die. The Spirit Maiden's lips twitched. You're not serious at all. Her body flashed, and she transformed into a streak of blue light before disappearing into the intricate palace. She was the artifact spirit. As long as the palace lived, she would live. If the palace died, she would die. Enlin naturally knew that the Spirit Maiden's act of entrusting the palace to him was an act of extreme trust. The 4-9 Immortal sect has gained another large-scale mystic realm now. I can use it to train the sect disciples' divine sense power. I'm sure the Spirit Maiden and Bai Ling will have many things in common. Enlin imagined the scene where the two of them would meet, and a hint of anticipation appeared on his face. At this moment, on top of a mountain, a few Return to Void stage mighty figures trembled in fear at the sight of Enlin in the distance. Terrifying. Enlin is far too terrifying. He was actually able to take the Spirit Patriarch Palace away, and even abduct the artifact spirit of the Spirit Patriarch Palace. What the hell is going on? We have to report this to the Emperors as soon as possible. We can't let him leave this place. That's right. If we can kill him, we'll be able to reclaim the Spirit Patriarch Palace. That would be a supreme glory. All the Return to Void stage mighty figures were extremely excited. What are you guys chatting about? Why are you guys so happy? A mocking voice suddenly sounded from above the heads of the Return to Void stage mighty figures. They raised their heads and were greeted by the sight of a nightmarish scene. The semi-transparent blue figure of Enlin was hovering in the air above them, looking down at them with a hint of a smile on his face. Enlin? It's Enlin in his spirit-body state. How is this possible? All of the Void Spirit Tribe mighty figures were in their spirit-body states, but Enlin wasn't a Void Spirit Tribe cultivator, yet he was in his spirit-body state. This was simply unimaginable. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face. Rest in peace. He snapped his fingers, and countless golden soul swords suddenly appeared beside him. The extremely terrifying soul power and bone-chilling sharpness struck all of the Return to Void stage mighty figures present with a sense of asphyxiation. These were the Holy Beast White Tiger's golden soul swords, the most powerful divine sense spell technique. Even the Sword Essence Emperor was unable to defend against these soul swords, let alone these Return to Void stage mighty figures. In an instant, sword projections fell like rain. The blood-curdling cries of the Return to Void stage mighty figures reverberated throughout heaven and earth, and all of them perished within a few seconds. Soon, Enlin's spirit body floated back into his physical body. Phew! This is the second time I've used my divine sense, and it feels a lot better. Enlin stretched his body as he looked around at the vast heaven and earth around him. It's time to meet up with Xiaolan and the others and get closer to the place where the battle is the most intense. Which direction should I go? He unleashed his peerless divine sense. He wasn't aiming for accuracy. All he wanted was to maximize the range of his divine sense before sensing the energy fluctuations of heaven and earth around him. Soon, Enlin turned toward a certain direction before tearing open a spatial rift and flying toward it. Within the spirit realm's blazing cemetery, at the center of this vast expanse of flames, there was a crystalline skull with black flames emanating boundless flame might. From the powerful energy fluctuations emanating from it, it was quite clear that this was a divine rank treasure. A semi-transparent skull with a black divine halo on its head was battling a three-headed dragon mutant beast off to the side. A woman in a blue and pink sailor suit was lying in ambush beside a silver flame tree in the distance. Her purple eyes were wide open as she stared at the intense battle taking place before her with a nervous expression. She seemed to be a little excited, and her slender, jade-like hands were already gripping tightly onto the silver flame tree trunk as her slender body trembled lightly. Found it, I've finally found it. The Black Crystal Void Spirit King at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage, one of the murderers who killed my mother. Chapter 1748. Lu Qianhuan would never be able to forget the scene of Qiu Hong being impaled by the Holy Death Spear, and she would never be able to forget her mother's expression as she died with her in her arms. She swore that she would take revenge one day. Now that the human race was in danger, she was afraid that she would never have the chance to take revenge, so when the spiritual realm opened this time, she sneaked into the spiritual realm. Even though I'm only at the Return to Void intermediate stage, my ancient sword Dao physique, coupled with my peerless sword Dao true intent, should be able to land the killing blow on a Black Crystal Void Spirit King. Lu Qianhuan's eyes flashed like lightning, and she no longer held her six-feathered staff in her hand. Instead, she held a sword. This sword was releasing waves of cold air, and a terrifying sharpness was waiting to be unleashed. The battle between the three-headed dragon and the Black Crystal Soul King had already reached its climax. The shock waves from their battle shook the earth and shook the mountains. Everything within a radius of 50 kilometers had been transformed into a barren land. The Black Crystal Soul King released its ghostly mist, which even suppressed the boundless raging flames of the blazing cemetery. The soul power of the three-headed dragon surged as it tore apart the ghostly mist and pounced toward the Black Crystal Soul King in a frenzy. The three dragon mouths simultaneously spat out terrifying breaths, severely injuring the Black Crystal Soul King and forcing it to retreat. When Lu Qianhuan saw this, she almost couldn't help but rush out. She was afraid that the black crystal spirit soul would die not by her hands, but by the three-headed dragon mutant beast instead. Timing was important as well. If the timing wasn't right, the three-headed dragon beast would steal the kill. In the next instant, however, the Black Crystal Soul King condensed a long spear made of pitch-black vines. It ferociously hurled the spear forward, piercing through one of the three-headed dragon's heads. The three-headed dragon screamed in pain. Lu Qianhuan's heart jolted. This was the holy death spear that had killed her mother. The Saint Death Spear was made from the ancient hell vines that grew in the Yellow Springs Divine Mountain, where the death chi was the thickest. It contained a trace of the power of law. Once it was thrown out, any enemy with a lower realm than the thrower would definitely be hit and die. The cultivation base of the three-headed dragon and the Black Crystal Soul King were obviously on par with each other. Thus, the Holy Death Spear was unable to instantly kill the three-headed dragon. Both sides were still fighting to the death, all for the sake of that god-tier item. But in this battle, there would come a time when the victor would be decided. In the end, all three heads of the three-headed dragon were blasted apart by the Black Crystal Soul King's sacred death spear. The Black Crystal Soul King had obtained the final victory. Now the underworld god skeleton is mine. With the dark god skeleton in my possession, I'm much more confident in my chances of advancing to the Tao integration stage. A smile appeared on the Black Crystal Soul King's face. Its spirit body was already riddled with cracks from the three-headed dragon's attack, but it still held the holy spear in its hand and sliced the three-headed dragon's body into several dozen pieces before slowly placing them into its storage ring. Behind the silver fire tree, Lu Qianhuan stepped forward. She gripped her scabbard tightly in one hand and pressed her other hand against the hilt of her sword. Her aura was still extremely restrained. The Black Crystal Soul Spirit was extremely weak right now, but it wasn't time for her to attack yet. A black shadow suddenly appeared from afar. With an extremely terrifying speed, it flew towards the flaming skull in the center of the blazing cemetery. You want to reap the benefits? Dream on. The Black Crystal Soul King roared with laughter as it hurled the Holy Death Spear in its hand. The commotion caused by the battle was so great that it was already prepared to be coveted by other powerhouses. Now, a return to void stage mighty figure was trying to take advantage of the situation. In that case, sorry, but this return to void stage mighty figure was the chicken that the Black Crystal Spirit King had killed to warn the rest. The Holy Death Spear pierced through the void and instantly pierced through the return to void stage mighty figure that was trying to take advantage of the situation. A wail of anguish reverberated through heaven and earth. A void spirit tribe mighty figure that looked like a tiger struggled on the ground as the Holy Death Spear rapidly devoured its aura. Without a doubt, this mighty figure was dead for sure. Now's the time. Lu Qianhuan was like an attacking leopard. She stamped her foot on the ground and shot forward like a bolt of lightning. A blue halo of light expanded outwards. The power of extreme frost contained within it instantly dispersed all the flames in the blazing cemetery. Even the ground that was covered in lava was covered in a layer of frost. Snow swirled through the air as frost and ice filled the sky. Lu Qianhuan's sword Dao Domain had already enveloped the Black Crystal Soul Spirit. The Black Crystal Soul Spirit's expression changed drastically as it sensed an extremely terrifying sword intent. It was just about to make a move when it discovered that all of its movements had become extremely slow after entering the opponent's sword Dao Domain. Lu Qianhuan moved like a bolt of lightning. She flashed toward the Soul Spirit, and a bright blue sword intent soared into the sky. The great ice sword was unsheathed. This was the sword that her mother, Qiu Hong, had forged for her. It was able to regulate the overly powerful and chaotic aura of her ancient sword Dao physique. For this sword, Qiu Hong had paid the price of her life. Lu Qianhuan had a love-hate relationship with this sword. This was also why she had chosen to become a young sorceress despite possessing a heaven-defying aptitude in the Tao of the sword. She had never been able to overcome this hurdle in her heart. When the great ice sword had first been forged, it had been an immortal sword. Now, however, it had already been nurtured into a peerless divine sword. Moreover, it was a divine sword that was most compatible with her sword Tao. In its haste, the black crystal soul spirit only had time to unleash its divine Tao black mist to protect its body. However, that dazzling sword projection stole the color of heaven and earth and cleanly sliced through the black mist it had condensed. Lu Qianhuan was already at the return to void intermediate stage. Now that she had activated her ancient sword Tao physique, her power had risen to the return to void pinnacle stage. Coupled with her peerless sword Tao and divine sword, even the black crystal soul spirit at its peak would find it difficult to block this sword strike, let alone the black crystal soul spirit in its weakened state. The great ice sword tore through the black mist divine Tao and landed on the black crystal soul spirit's extremely sturdy spirit body skull. A sharp tearing sound and a wail of anguish erupted. After the skull was sliced open, the divine sword continued to slice the black crystal soul spirit's body into two. Lu Qianhuan sheathed her sword lightly. A bone-chilling aura emanated from her graceful figure, making her appear like a celestial maiden. The enemy who had once caused her to feel despair had now been sliced into two halves and collapsed to the ground. You're Lu Qianhuan? The black crystal soul spirit's lips twitched as it spoke with great difficulty. You're here for revenge? Heh, so you still remember what you've done in the past. Lu Qianhuan smiled, but her eyes were filled with coldness and hatred. There was a bitter expression on the black crystal soul spirit's face. How could it forget what it had done in the past? Because of that incident, it hadn't dared to step out of the void spirit realm for a very long time. Who would have thought that it would be killed in the spirit realm? Lu Qianhuan made a grabbing motion toward the void in the distance. The holy death spear trembled slightly before flying from the void spirit tribe supreme being's corpse into her hand. Then, she refined it in an extremely violent manner. You used this holy death spear to kill my mother. Now, I'll let you have a taste of this holy death spear. After saying this, she suddenly stabbed the spear into the black crystal soul spirit's body. The black crystal soul spirit let out a wail of anguish. However, a sinister smile appeared on its face. Ha ha! The holy death spear can only insta-kill enemies whose cultivation bases are lower than its wielders. However, my cultivation base is higher than yours. Lu Qianhuan's expression was cold and detached. That's perfect. I don't want you to die too quickly either. I'll stab you a few more times so that you can experience the feeling of death a few more times. That's even better. The black crystal soul spirit's expression faltered, and an expression of shock and terror appeared on its face. At this moment, the holy death spear was pulled out again before stabbing into its body again. Ah! The black crystal soul spirit's anguished wails reverberated through the world of ice and snow. Lu Qianhuan was expressionless as she pulled out the holy death spear once again before stabbing it into its body again. Anguished wails reverberated throughout the blazing cemetery. The holy death spear stabbed into the black crystal soul spirit's body over and over again. In the end, the mighty black crystal soul spirit was stabbed to death by Lu Qianhuan's holy death spear. The female gripped the vine spear tightly as she looked up into the sky. It was as if she could pierce through time and see that gentle face. "Mother, I've avenged you," she said softly. Chapter 1749. Lu Qianhuan felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders as she stared at the lifeless black crystal soul spirit. However, her path of vengeance wasn't over yet. She still had an even more powerful enemy, the Infernal Abyss Emperor. The Infernal Abyss Emperor was already a super mighty figure of the Tao integration stage. For a return to void stage sword immortal to kill such an existence would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. However, Lu Qianhuan was different. She was a peerless sword embryo, and her transcendental sword techniques could elevate her combat prowess drastically. That, coupled with her ancient sword Dao physique, allowed her to surpass that invisible chasm. As long as the timing is right, it won't be a difficult task to harvest a bunch of enemies. Lu Qianhuan exhaled lightly as if she was trying to cheer herself up. Unlin is only at the return to void stage, but he can already kill super mighty figures at the Dao integration pinnacle stage. I don't have cheats like him, but it's not too much for a return to void stage cultivator to kill a Dao integration initial stage cultivator, right? She shook her head and turned her gaze towards the center of the blazing cemetery. There was also a deity-grade item, the underworld god skeleton. This was a supreme treasure that two return to void final stage mighty figures were willing to risk their lives in order to obtain. Although her goal was revenge, how could she not pick up a treasure that had fallen to the ground? Lu Qianhuan stowed the holy death spear into her storage ring before making her way toward the dark god skeleton. She knew that there were still a few pairs of eyes peeking at her, eager to make a move, but they didn't dare to show their faces. Her stunning sword strike, which had sliced the black crystal soul spirit into two, had already intimidated the surrounding hidden demons. Thus, Lu Qianhuan stowed the dark god skeleton into her storage ring without any obstructions. Just as she was about to leave, her pretty face suddenly changed, and the sharp and terrifying aura around her instantly retracted. She stretched out her hand and directly tore space apart, wanting to escape. Ha ha! I heard from the Swamp Void Spirit King that there's a divine rank treasure here. Where did it go? A hearty laugh rang out from afar, and the space within a radius of several hundred kilometers was instantly sealed, making it impossible for the almighty beings to use spatial power. The might of a Dao integration stage being swept forth from extremely far away, striking fear into the hearts of all living beings present. Lu Qianhuan's heart skipped a beat as an expression of rage appeared on her face. Some mighty figures didn't dare to attack her, but they sold the information to other super mighty figures? What a good way to divert the conflict. Not only did he avoid the danger, he also sold a favor. He was really cheap. Lu Qianhuan was unable to use her spatial ability to escape, so she could only fly into the distance on her sword. Her flying speed was extremely fast, like a blue bolt of lightning. In just one breath, she had flown dozens of miles away. In 6 breaths, she would be able to escape from the sealed space. However, the super almighty behind him was clearly much faster. It soon appeared in Lu Qianhuan's field of vision. The blood-red skeleton had a particularly large head, and it was holding a crimson, sharp scythe in its hand. It had a mocking smile on its face, as if it was a cat playing with a mouse. Isn't that the Sword Pavilion Lord of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, Lu Qianhuan? What a rare guest. You've actually come to the spirit realm. I've never eaten a Sword Immortal's divine soul with such a good aptitude. I'm in luck now, the blood-red skeleton said with an unruly and sinister smile. Lu Qianhuan's face was deathly pale as she fled into the distance with all her might. It was the god-engulfing skeleton at the Dao integration pinnacle stage. What kind of luck was this? The spirit realm was so vast, so why did she have to encounter one of the most powerful beings in the Void Spirit tribe? Was her luck that bad? Or could it be that she had already used up all her luck when she encountered the Black Crystal Void Spirit King? Was she really that unlucky now? So it's Lu Qianhuan. You were the one who killed the Black Crystal Void Spirit King just then, right? A sinister voice sounded from behind her. Lu Qianhuan saw a figure that infuriated her. It was the infernal Abyss Emperor. He was one of the 2 enemies who had killed her mother, and he was also her last enemy. She had initially wanted to wait for the infernal Abyss Emperor to battle the other powerful beings before taking revenge. However, never would she have thought that the infernal Abyss Emperor would appear before her unscathed. Moreover, he had an ally at the Dao integration pinnacle stage with him. Sure enough, things wouldn't develop according to her expectations. One misstep, and she would be consigned to eternal damnation. The god engulfing skeleton chuckled. Infernal Abyss, I've heard about you guys. Qiuhong was killed by you, right? Does this mean that Lu Qianhuan is here for revenge? The two-headed Infernal Abyss Emperor nodded. A disdainful smile appeared on its face. That B*TCH, Qiuhong, barged into the void spirit realm. Who would have thought that her daughter would also be the same? She actually barged into the spirit realm. Since we've encountered each other, don't blame me for being cruel and merciless. I'll send her to meet her mother. The two-headed monster spread open its arms and looked at the frantically fleeing Lu Qianhuan with a mocking expression. Come on. I'll give you a chance to avenge your mother. Come and stab me. Lu Qianhuan gritted her teeth, and her body trembled with rage. However, she still continued to flee into the distance. Infernal Abyss, aren't you just bullying me? You've already reached the Dao integration stage. Even if you stand here and let her attack you, she might not be able to harm you. The god engulfing skeleton chortled. The Infernal Abyss Emperor also chortled. The two Dao integration stage super mighty figures were closing in on Lu Qianhuan. A sinister expression appeared on the Infernal Abyss Emperor's face. I killed Qiuhong. Now leave Lu Qianhuan to me as well. Both mother and daughter should be killed by me. The god engulfing skeleton nodded. It had no objections. That divine rank item belongs to me. No problem, the Infernal Abyss Emperor replied. I want her corpse. I can use it to refine a soul corp. The battle hadn't even begun, but the two super mighty figures were already discussing how to split the spoils of war. In the eyes of Dao integration stage super mighty figures, return to void stage mighty figures who had yet to attain the divine Dao were merely slightly larger ants. They weren't worthy of their attention. Come, hee. The Infernal Abyss Emperor transformed into a sinister black monster, and countless tentacles shot toward the female flying on her sword like venomous snakes. Lu Qianhuan, the person who killed your mother is here, the Infernal Abyss Emperor taunted. Just as the Infernal Abyss Emperor was laughing loudly, an indescribable chill suddenly enveloped its entire body. Whoosh! An astonishing sword intent erupted from Lu Qianhuan's great ice sword. Like a graceful swan, she turned at an incredible speed and rapidly closed in on the Infernal Abyss Emperor. The Infernal Abyss Emperor was given a huge fright. Countless tentacles still pounced toward Lu Qianhuan. However, their speed was actually slowed down by the extreme chill of the sword Dao. Lu Qianhuan advanced courageously, dodging the countless tentacles. At the same time, the divine sword in her hand also slashed down. Amidst the snow-white, sharp frost, it seemed as if the sword was reflecting a dazzling light. This was the final killing technique that Lu Qianhuan had prepared for the Infernal Abyss Emperor. It was also her most powerful attack, falling clouds of snow. An indescribable sword projection split heaven and earth. The snow-white blade of the sword was tinged with a peculiar color. It was as gorgeous as the first glow of dawn after a snowstorm. The Infernal Abyss Emperor didn't even have time to dodge. The extreme sharpness of the sword had already torn its body apart. Then it was frozen solid. A wail of anguish reverberated through the air. A female wielding a divine sword flew toward the Infernal Abyss Emperor. Boundless flames of rage burned in her purple eyes. Didn't you tell me to slash you? I'll kill you right now. Chapter 1750. The Infernal Abyss Emperor was almost sliced in half by Lu Qianhuan's sword strike. A terrifying frost power spread from the massive gash, threatening to freeze its entire body. The Infernal Abyss Emperor was shocked, but it also felt an unprecedented sense of humiliation when it heard Lu Qianhuan threaten to kill it. As a Dao integration stage super mighty figure, it was extremely humiliating for it to be severely wounded by a return to void stage cultivator. At this moment, Lu Qianhuan had already charged toward the Infernal Abyss Emperor again. Her terrifying sword intent and astonishing killing intent fused together, causing her sword to explode with even more terrifying might. What the hell? How can a return to void stage cultivator unleash such a powerful sword technique? The Infernal Abyss Emperor's expression changed drastically. It wanted to retaliate and kill his opponent, but it discovered that its body was being corroded by the frost power, and its movements were extremely slow. There was no way it could block Lu Qianhuan's second sword strike. Lu Qianhuan's attacks were as quick as lightning. She didn't give the Infernal Abyss Emperor any time to react, and she unleashed her second killing technique. She had originally planned to use these killing techniques when the Infernal Abyss Emperor was severely wounded. However, she clearly had no other choice now. She could only hope that the Infernal Abyss Emperor was weaker than she had imagined so that she could kill her last enemy before she died. Lu Qianhuan knew that with the god engulfing skeleton around, she wouldn't be able to leave the spirit realm alive. Thus, she had to give it her all to kill her enemy. At this moment, she activated her ancient sword Dao physique to the extreme. Her blood essence was also ignited to the extreme. In contrast to this, she possessed supreme combat prowess that was far superior to her own. Die! Lu Qianhuan roared. At this moment, she was like a peerless sword immortal wielding a divine sword. She unleashed the most stunning sword strike of her life. At this moment, a sword intent pierced through the heavens. Her sword Dao domain spread throughout heaven and earth. Within a radius of 50 kilometers, snow drifted down. The void was eternally frozen. Lu Qianhuan was going to kill the Infernal Abyss Emperor with this sword strike. A look of fear appeared on the Infernal Abyss Emperor's face. It sensed a lethal threat from Lu Qianhuan's sword strike. This return to void stage cultivator really wanted to kill it. Moreover, she had the ability to do so. Lu Qianhuan wielded her great ice sword and slashed it down furiously toward the Infernal Abyss Emperor. The Infernal Abyss Emperor hurriedly used its tentacles to block the attack. However, its tentacles, which was extremely rich in soul power, were instantly pulverized by the sword might. Lu Qianhuan had poured everything into this sword strike, and its power was already comparable to that of a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. The divine sword whistled through the air, and it was about to tear the Infernal Abyss Emperor's body into pieces. Right at this moment, a blood-red scythe suddenly appeared in front of the Infernal Abyss Emperor. The god engulfing skeleton had teleported here. The blood-red scythe collided with the extremely sharp sword slash. The space within a radius of 100 miles trembled, and then the energy of the collision exploded. At the center of the collision between the two god artifacts, there seemed to be red and blue balls of light fighting each other madly. The dispersed sword chi tore the ground to pieces, and the bloodthirsty red light dyed the sky red. Living beings who didn't know better would think that this was a battle between two Dao integration stage super mighty figures. The god engulfing skeleton was forced back several hundred meters by the terrifying sword intent. However, at the same time, Lu Qianhuan also spat out a mouthful of blood and stumbled back in retreat. I'm already at the Dao integration pinnacle stage. Who would have thought that I would be forced back by a return to void intermediate stage junior? There was a look of astonishment on the god engulfing skeleton's face. Although it wasn't injured, the might of this sword strike had far exceeded its expectations. The Infernal Abyss Emperor was also feeling a lingering fear. If this sword strike had landed on its body, even if it didn't die, it would at least be severely wounded. However, Lu Qianhuan is still too impatient. With such aptitude, if her cultivation base could reach a higher level, her chances of successfully exacting her revenge would be much greater. The god engulfing skeleton had already stopped underestimating Lu Qianhuan. It's a pity that she's fallen by my hands now. Ha ha! I'm most excited to personally slay a peerless sword cultivator. As it spoke, the god engulfing skeleton slashed its scythe again. A sharp light flashed through the sky, and it was as if the heavens had been sliced in half by this slash. Lu Qianhuan, who was almost completely drained of energy, raised her sword to defend herself. However, the boundless divine might emanating from the blood-red scythe slashed her into the ground, creating a massive crater. I was so close. Why did things turn out like this? Tears welled up in her eyes as she lay on the crater. There was an expression of indignation on her face. If the god-engulfing skeleton hadn't interfered, she could have taken advantage of the fact that the infernal Abyss Emperor had underestimated her and killed it. However, the heavens still played a joke on her. She was clearly the one with a lower cultivation base than her, and she was clearly the one who was at an absolute disadvantage. However, it turned out that there was an extremely terrifying being behind her, and this being was going to intervene for her. This was truly a joke of fate. Lu Qianhuan gripped her great ice divine sword tightly. Her slender, snow-white legs were bent, and her body was curled into a ball. Blood seeped out from the corner of her mouth, and her pinkish-blue sailor uniform had already been sliced open in the middle. Fresh blood dyed her clothes red. It was already extremely difficult for her to even stand up again. Was she going to die here in the end? She wasn't afraid of death. She was merely regretful that she hadn't been able to completely avenge her mother. "Let me kill this B***tch," the infernal Abyss Emperor said with a cold smile. "She dared to injure me. I'm going to extract her consciousness and make her suffer the most terrifying torture. Then, I'll slowly torture her to death." Its body, which had been sliced open by the great ice divine sword, had already healed. However, its surface was still covered in a layer of frost. Countless sinister-looking, pitch-black tentacles transformed into sharp swords, sabers, and spears. All of them aimed their sharp tips at the woman on the ground, who couldn't even move her body. This technique of mine doesn't harm the physical body. It will only torture and kill the consciousness. After all, I still need to refine your body into a soul corp. Now I'll let you taste extreme pain. A pitch-black blade descended from the sky and slashed toward the woman who was curled up into a ball on the ground. Lu Qianhuan's heart was filled with bitterness as she looked at the pitch-black blade descending from the sky. An indescribable feeling welled up in her heart. She was indignant, but it also transformed into melancholy and an attachment to this world. Right at this moment, a white figure appeared in front of her. He stood there silently, and his clothes fluttered in the wind. At this moment, the entire space around them fell silent. Faced with the terrifying blade, the man lightly waved his sword. A white sword projection instantly shattered all of the soul power attack. Even the powerful infernal Abyss Emperor was sent flying, wailing in agony. "Let's see who dares to touch Huan Huan." The man's magnetic voice traveled over. Just like that, he stood in front of the woman. He was as still as a pine tree, and he held a long sword in his hand as he faced the two Dao integration stage super mighty figures in the distance. Lu Qianhuan stared at the familiar figure, and her entire body was rooted to the spot. She was in slight disbelief, but her eyes had already turned red. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something. However, the words were stuck in her throat. In the end, however, she still managed to utter the word that she hadn't said for many years. "Father." Chapter 1751. The newcomer was Lu Qianhuan's father, the sect leader of the Heavenly Sword sect, Lu Mingxian. Lu Qianhuan didn't think that her father would appear before her at a time like this. However, she already knew why her father was here the moment he appeared. Both of them had the same goal in mind. They were both here for revenge. "Howl. Lu Mingxian, I didn't think that a sect leader like you would dare to venture into the spirit realm." A hint of wariness appeared on the infernal Abyss Emperor's face. "Ha ha! Isn't this perfect? He's just a Dao integration intermediate stage sword immortal. Why should I be afraid of him? Now that both father and daughter are here, I'll take them all down in one fell swoop." A cruel smile appeared on the god-engulfing skeleton's face as it wielded its crimson scythe. As one of the most powerful beings in the void spirit realm, the god-engulfing skeleton naturally had the right to look down on Lu Mingxian. It wouldn't be afraid even if there were two Lu Mingxian, let alone one. Lu Mingxian pulled out a pill from his storage ring. As soon as the pill appeared, a green divine light surged through the air, and all living things came to life. Grass and flowers instantly sprouted from the devastated ground, and the extremely rich divine power fluctuations made all of the living beings present shudder with emotion. Without a doubt, this was a priceless godly dan. Lu Mingxian stuffed the divine pill into Lu Qianhuan's mouth without hesitation. I don't. Lu Qianhuan wanted to refuse, but Lu Mingxian still forced the pill into her mouth. A vast divine power and healing ability healed Lu Qianhuan's injuries at an extremely terrifying speed and allowed her to quickly recover her strength. You shouldn't have come here. Lu Mingxian sighed. Why shouldn't I? If I don't avenge my mother now, I might never have the chance again. Lu Qianhuan yelled with bloodshot eyes. I'll avenge Qiuhong. Get out of here, Lu Mingxian said. Lu Qianhuan's expression faltered as she looked at the man standing before her. You want to escape? None of you can leave. The god-engulfing skeleton pounced toward Lu Mingxian with its crimson scythe. An earth-shattering sword intent erupted from Lu Mingxian's body, and it was as if a divine sword had pierced through the clouds. The earth within a radius of 50 kilometers was instantly pulverized by the sword intent. He held an ancient sword that emitted a dazzling golden light and swung it at the sky. Countless golden sword cheese soared into the sky, slicing the void along the way into pieces of dislocated space. The sword cheese were like dragons and seas, extremely spectacular and dazzling, the golden color illuminating the entire sky. Each and every one of his sword projections was imbued with the essential aura of the sword Dao and could easily pierce through the defenses of a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. The god-engulfing skeleton was just about to use its scythe to slice through the sword intent. Lu Mingxian suddenly flipped his ancient sword. Change formation. The golden sword intent that was surging with killing intent a moment ago suddenly unleashed an extremely powerful sealing light, which transformed into countless golden shards that enshrouded the god-engulfing skeleton. What? The god-engulfing skeleton's expression shifted drastically, and its body faltered in that instant. It had been bound by the countless web-like threads unleashed by the golden shard. A boundless might of the sword Dao erupted forth, transforming into the crushing weight of a divine mountain that made even its bones creak and groan. Lu Mingxian turned toward Lu Qianhuan. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and run. Lu Qianhuan crawled up from the ground. The power of the divine pill was still surging within her body. Not only had she recovered from most of her injuries, but she was also brimming with energy. There was a complex expression on her face as she looked at the male who was trying his best to block her path. I won't leave. If I leave, you'll still die. Lu Qianhuan slowly drew her sword and raised her head to look at the god-engulfing skeleton, who was trapped by the golden shard. She once again expended the power of her ancient sword Dao physique, without any regard for the price she had to pay. At this moment, a black figure approached from afar. Countless tentacles transformed into countless fearsome black divine weapons that slashed toward Lu Mingxian. Lu Mingxian, I'm going to kill you! The infernal abyss emperor cackled arrogantly. Lu Mingxian, who was currently trying his best to trap the god-engulfing skeleton, had no way of defending himself against another Dao integration stage super mighty figure's sneak attack. When he entered the range of the infernal abyss emperor's attack, a familiar spatial freeze suddenly enshrouded his entire body. All of the infernal abyss emperor's movements became extremely slow. How dare you? You're actually not running away. It had suffered a setback once before, so it knew how to deal with Lu Qianhuan's strange abilities. It instantly materialized a high-density black sword blade in front of it and slashed forward. The combination of speed, density, and power was the key to breaking through Lu Qianhuan's sword Dao domain. The pitch-black sword blade screeched as it tore through the space that had been frozen by the extreme cold. The great ice divine sword and the pitch-black sword blade collided in this instant. Boom! The void trembled and energy exploded. The frenzied sword intent pulverized the earth within a radius of several dozen kilometers. The infernal Abyss Emperor was blasted back by the sword intent, and the black sword blade was covered with cracks. Lu Qianhuan retreated lightly and steadied herself after dispersing the force of the impact. A peculiar flush appeared on her fair and delicate cheeks, perhaps due to the effects of the divine pill. Then, she didn't even need to catch her breath before she continued to charge toward the infernal Abyss Emperor. The infernal Abyss Emperor was enraged. It hurriedly defended itself against Lu Qianhuan's relentless attack. It discovered that Lu Qianhuan's body was surging with energy after taking the pill. Her battle prowess was even faintly superior to its own. Damn it! I'm actually being suppressed by a return to void stage sword cultivator? The infernal Abyss Emperor was extremely aggrieved. Not only am I going to suppress you, but I'm also going to kill you. Killing intent surged from Lu Qianhuan's body as her sword intent roared. The division of labor was very clear now. Lu Mingxian was responsible for delaying the god-engulfing skeleton, while Lu Qianhuan was responsible for killing the infernal Abyss Emperor. If Lu Mingxian were to do these two things at the same time, then not only would he not be able to exact his revenge, but he would also lose his life here. This was also the reason why Lu Qianhuan had chosen to stay behind. Lu Mingxian was also slightly dazed when he saw that Lu Qianhuan was actually able to suppress the infernal Abyss Emperor. He really didn't realize that his daughter had actually grown to this extent in the past 100 years. 100 years wasn't a long time for Dao integration stage super mighty figures. However, Lu Qianhuan's growth in 100 years was already far beyond Lu Mingxuan's expectations. A loud explosion sounded in the air. A dark red sword projection shattered the golden shards. The god-engulfing skeleton appeared in the sky again. Lu Mingxian, since you're seeking death, I'll fulfill your wish. It tossed its divine scythe high into the sky. The power of death surged violently and dyed the sky red. Two dark red rivers crisscrossed in the sky, extending into infinity and beyond. Lu Mingxian was standing at the center of the crisscrossed rivers. Lu Mingxian looked up from the ground. He could see countless living beings dying within the dark red rivers. Countless living beings were wailing in anguish. Billions of dense death auras and killing intent were sufficient to strip away the vitality of all living beings before corroding and engulfing them. Within a radius of 500 kilometers, all living beings stiffened as their vitality was severed. Countless plants withered and shriveled, and some were even reduced to dust. All of this was because of the two dark red rivers in the sky. I'll destroy you with this technique. The god-engulfing skeleton spoke indifferently. It extended its skeletal hand and pressed downward. Its voice was like a demonic voice from hell. Star-engulfing, heavenly river of death. Chapter 1752. Two intertwining rivers descended from the sky. Dark red divine Dao light blanketed the entire sky. Boundless killing intent and death intent seemed to be able to engulf the entire world. Lu Mingxian had already been targeted by the river. No matter where he fled to, the river would be able to engulf him. This was a heavenly river that could engulf stars, so how could an ant like him escape? Countless golden divine patterns appeared on the surface of Lu Mingxuan's ancient sword. Each and every golden divine pattern represented a sword Dao that had been cultivated to the extreme. He had already explored the limits of the sword in countless directions. All of the sword Dao turned into a torrential true intent of the sword Dao. It was like a boundless river that was attached to the ancient sword. It was even more majestic than the death galaxy in the sky. An unimaginably sharp light began to radiate from the ancient sword. The sword cultivator, who was standing quietly on the spot, did not say a word and just lifted the ancient sword. The golden sword rose into the sky, and it wasn't very large in the beginning. However, the higher it rose, the larger it became. Over 1,000 feet, 10,000 feet, 100,000 feet, 1,000,000 feet. The god-engulfing skeleton could sense a sharp light that struck fear into its heart. The dark red heavenly river of death clashed violently with the golden sword projection. The heavenly river was like a ravenous demon, biting and devouring the golden sword projection in a frenzy. Meanwhile, the golden sword projection was so pure and profound that it seemed to be able to transcend all things. The clash between the two was initially evenly matched. However, in the end, the golden sword projection broke through the heavenly river of death and sliced it in half down the middle. The god-engulfing skeleton's expression shifted drastically. It was just about to do something when the golden sword projection had already pierced through space and instantly struck its body. Its Tao body was shattered, and it was pushed back several dozen kilometers. PFFF. Lu Mingxuan's body swayed slightly as he threw up a mouthful of blood. This attack had expended a vast amount of his blood essence. He didn't even have a chance to catch his breath before the red clouds descended upon him again. As expected of the Heavenly Sword sect, as expected of the number 1 sect in the Kingdom of the Nine State. Sect Leader Lu, you're very impressive. To think that you were able to wound me. The god-engulfing skeleton flew toward him again. The bones on its chest had been shattered, and there was an extremely thick sword gash on its chest from which golden sword projection wreaked havoc. However, in order to resist my death galaxy, you must have used up all of your strength in that previous attack, right? Ha ha, how stupid. If you abandon that foolish woman, you can escape from here with your strength. But you insisted on staying and fighting to the death with me. Your daughter won't be able to escape, and you're going to die here as well. A mocking smile appeared on the god-engulfing skeleton's face. As a Tao integration stage sword cultivator, Lu Mingxian unleashed his full power in an instant. Even the god-engulfing skeleton wouldn't be able to block him. However, that didn't matter. After all, the god-engulfing skeleton's skin was extremely thick. If you couldn't insta-kill it, then you were going to die. Next, how should I torture you? A Tao integration stage sword immortal. I've never killed such an interesting enemy before. The crimson skeleton grinned. It swung its scythe through the air. Lu Mingxian hurriedly raised his sword to defend himself. The crimson blade suddenly appeared and stabbed toward his chest, but it was blocked by the ancient sword just in time. As the flames burst forth, his body was pushed back by the terrifying force. A dark light flashed across the god-engulfing skeleton's scythe. Life reaping. Screech, blood splattered through the air. A black scythe-like blade suddenly appeared behind Lu Mingxian and pierced through his chest. Blood quickly spread and dyed his white robe red. The sharp blades began to extend, and like a dark and sharp spiderweb, they tore through the flesh on Lu Mingxuan's chest. When they completely extended to his entire body, they would be able to pulverize his body into pieces of minced meat. Enjoy the beautiful process of life gradually fading away. A sinister smile appeared on the god-engulfing skeleton's face. Regardless of whether it's in the void spirit realm or the spirit realm, I'm a god. Anyone who dares to oppose me must die. Lu Qianhuan slashed the infernal abyss emperor aside and turned to look at the male who had been pierced by the black scythe. Her heart trembled violently, and an expression of incredulity appeared on her face. The man who had always been indomitable and invincible in her heart was now quickly fading away. His entire white robe was dyed red with blood. Lu Mingxian was also silently looking at the female in the distance. It was as if he was looking at her one last time. The female's face was reflected in his exhausted eyes, and it was as if his gaze had pierced through time and space and overlapped with another woman. I'm already useless. I've already lost Qiuhong. I can't stand by and watch you die here. Lu Mingxian smiled as he pulled out a translucent small sword from his storage ring. There were complex crimson patterns on the surface of the sword, and it pulsed with astonishing energy fluctuations. He murmured in a low voice, I use my blood essence, my primordial spirit, my power, and all of my sword Dao true intent to nourish this sword. The fluctuations emanating from the small sword in his hand became more and more terrifying. Lu Qianhuan's expression changed drastically, as if she had detected something. Tears instantly welled up in her eyes as she shook her head repeatedly. No, don't do this. Lu Mingxuan's aura quickly weakened, and the translucent small sword in his hand became extremely red. There was even a layer of golden light on its surface. Lu Qianhuan knew that this was her father's blood essence and final sword Dao true intent. Forgive me, Huan. You have to live on, the man said with a resolute expression, and the small sword in his hand also shot out at this moment. The small sword pierced through Lu Qianhuan's body. However, it released an extremely powerful sword projection that carried Lu Qianhuan into the distance at an incredible speed. Haha, you want to escape? Dream on. The infernal abyss emperor blocked Lu Qianhuan's path of escape. Countless black blades materialized around it. However, before it could even attack, the small sword had already closed in on its body. The golden blade projection tore through the infernal abyss emperor's body and sliced it in half. The infernal abyss emperor wailed in anguish. Idiot. The god engulfing skeleton glanced at the infernal abyss emperor. This small sword appeared to be very reserved, but it contained the final sword intent of Lu Mingxian. How could a super mighty being of the Dao integration initial stage like the infernal abyss emperor possibly block it? Even the god engulfing skeleton didn't dare to take the risk. The flying sword carried Lu Qianhuan away from the battlefield at an extremely fast speed. Father! She stared at the figure that was getting further and further away from her. She could no longer see his face, and she would never be able to see him again. Tears finally flowed out of her eyes, and she began to bawl loudly. She disliked her father very much. Ever since her mother had died to forge a sword for her, there had been a deep estrangement between her and her father. This estrangement became even more estranged when her father found a new lover. Over the past 100 years, there had been very little communication between them. However, at this moment, this person whom she detested the most had sacrificed his own life for her. All of this was exactly the same as when her mother had sacrificed herself for her 100 years ago. Why did it have to be like this? Lu Qianhuan's eyes were red from crying. I clearly detest you so much, and I've already distanced myself from you so much. Why did you still sacrifice your own life to save me? No one answered her. The only reply she received was the howling of the bone-chilling wind. On the wreckage of the battlefield, Lu Mingxian had already lost all power to resist. His aura was extremely weak, but his body was still as straight as a sword. It was as if nothing could bend him. Sect leader Lu is truly a loyal person. Your daughter has been saved by you, so you can rest in peace now. The god engulfing skeleton chuckled. It swooped down with its crimson scythe, preparing to complete the final harvest. Chapter 1753. Frosty winds howled. A vast killing intent crashed down from the sky. Lu Mingxian gripped his sword tightly as he looked at the oncoming god engulfing skeleton. Even though he couldn't block the god engulfing skeleton's attack, he was still going to unleash the final strike of his life. I, Lu Mingxian, will die here today not because of you, but because… Lu Mingxian suddenly let loose a cry of shock and horror. His waist was grabbed by a person, and his body was abruptly dragged toward another direction. The blood-red scythe fell completely, splitting the earth into two halves. Lu Mingxian saw a man with a handsome face and a pair of deep, piercing eyes. This man was also dressed in a white robe, and he bore a strong resemblance to Lu Mingxian, but he had a different kind of vitality to him. He was a little dazed and incredulous. You are. Cut the crap. If it weren't for Lu Qianhuan, I wouldn't even bother to save you. The handsome man spoke with a resigned expression. This man was none other than Enlin, who had unleashed his divine sense and followed the battle to this location. He had initially wanted to kill Lu Mingxian, but he didn't think that he would witness such a terrifying scene. The god engulfing skeleton wanted to kill Lu Mingxian? Even though he didn't like Lu Mingxian, Lu Qianhuan would be very sad if Lu Mingxian died, right? Furthermore, Lu Mingxian was one of the main forces of the Kingdom of the Nine States against the heavenly human tribe. They couldn't afford to lose him. Enlin didn't hesitate and immediately began to rescue Lu Mingxian. Enlin fled for over 50 kilometers with a man in his arms before releasing Lu Mingxian with a disdainful expression. His storage ring then flashed, and a crystalline disc appeared in his hand. Xiao Fu set up the Karma Star Protection Formation to protect this detestable man and treat his injuries. Enlin instructed. A delicate little loli jumped out and blinked her bright eyes with curiosity. She couldn't understand why Enlin insisted on protecting and treating this detestable man even though he was calling him a detestable man. 3 seconds later, Xiao Fu figured it out and said excitedly, "Leave it to me." A massive and powerful spell formation instantly formed around Lu Mingxian. Lu Mingxian looked at the white-robed man before him with a complex expression. "Enlin, I owe you a favor. But this is the spirit realm, and most of the powerful beings here are from the Void Spirit tribe, so we should retreat for now. Stop wasting time. You can't even defeat a god-engulfing skeleton. Just stay here and watch my performance." Enlin waved his hand impatiently. "You?" Lu Mingxian was infuriated. At this time, the red clouds in the distance were already approaching, and there were also masses of black fog. "Ha ha! I was wondering who it was. So, it's that mouse that escaped from me." A mocking expression appeared on the god-engulfing skeleton's face. "It wasn't easy for you to escape. Why are you taking things too hard and running back to throw your life away?" The Infernal Abyss Emperor, who had just reattached his body, also spoke in a mocking tone. The image of Enlin fleeing for his life had been deeply engraved into the minds of these two Tao integration stage super mighty figures, and they were both ecstatic to see this. This was great. They could wash away their previous humiliation. "Enlin, you won't be able to escape this time. Die." The god-engulfing skeleton charged toward Enlin menacingly. Enlin walked out of the Karma Star Protection Formation and sneered. "Escape?" He slowly drew his evil-slaying sword. "My apologies, but I'm here to hack everyone here to death." "Hack us to death?" The god-engulfing skeleton and the Infernal Abyss Emperor both faltered momentarily before bursting into laughter. "Ha ha! Did I hear wrongly? Little Mouse Enlin wants to kill us?" The Infernal Abyss Emperor couldn't help but burst into laughter as he clutched his pitch-black belly. He's already forgotten how pathetic he looked when he was fleeing. I don't mind teaching him a lesson that will pierce straight into the depths of his soul. The god-engulfing skeleton chuckled coldly as it wielded its crimson scythe. Enlin didn't say anything. Instead, he stepped forward, and his body tore through the void and instantly appeared before the god-engulfing skeleton. A dazzling light as bright as the sun burst forth from his fist. "What? So fast?" The god-engulfing skeleton was given a fright. However, the scythe in its hand was even faster than Enlin's, and it slashed through the void in a lethal trajectory. Enlin's eyes had already become pure white, and everything before his eyes seemed to have slowed down to a crawl. He leaned forward and evaded the scythe's attack with his agile movement techniques while unleashing a powerful punch at the same time. Bam! A golden divine power surged forth, and the terrifying shockwave even sent the nearby Infernal Abyss Emperor flying. The god-engulfing skeleton also let loose a wail of anguish as it plummeted from the sky. How could this be? How could he be so powerful? The God-engulfing skeleton could sense that Enlin's power had already reached the Tao integration pinnacle stage. No, I must have been too careless just now. At this moment, a piercingly cold sword intent surged through the void. 99 white celestial swords exuded a boundless sword might, and their radiance illuminated the entire realm. A black divine halo appeared above Enlin's head, from which a paramount divine might exuded. The power of the heavenly metal god was imbued into each and every one of the celestial swords, imbuing them with the power to destroy all things. 6 strikes of the war god 100 sword. Streaks of sharp sword projections descended from the sky. The god-engulfing skeleton sensed a lethal threat from these sword projections, and it hurriedly swung its crimson scythe to block the flying swords. However, each and every flying sword weighed hundreds of millions of tons, and it was as if they were trying to push through everything in their path. The explosive collisions caused its bones to tremble violently, and it almost lost its grip on the scythe. What kind of terrifying power was this? Enlin could actually wield this kind of power. The god-engulfing skeleton knew that Enlin could wield powers similar to the metal gods. However, wasn't the number of times he could use it? How could he use it so recklessly? Finally, the celestial swords broke through the god-engulfing skeleton's defenses and landed on its body. The extreme sharpness of the swords crashed into its bones, instantly tearing apart its Tao bones, which were as tough as immortal tools. Ah! The god-engulfing skeleton howled in anguish again. Boom, boom, boom. Sword intent exploded, and bones flew everywhere. All 99 celestial swords fell in an instant. The god-engulfing skeleton had already been punctured by the celestial swords, and it lay on the ground riddled with wounds. The evil-slaying sword transformed into the last of the 100 swords, and an extremely dazzling light erupted from it as it descended from the sky and pierced through the god-engulfing skeleton's chest, pinning it to the ground. Enlin descended from the sky and stomped a foot onto the god-engulfing skeleton's head. A hint of a smile appeared on his face. Is this all a Void Spirit Tribe's super mighty figure can do? Little Mouse Enlin hasn't even used his full strength yet. The god-engulfing skeleton coughed up a few shattered bones, and a dazed expression appeared on its face. How could this be? How could your aura and power have suddenly become so much more powerful? You clearly have the power to back off, so why did you run away? It was unable to reconcile the disheveled Enlin from before with the incomprehensibly powerful Enlin at this moment. As for the infernal Abyss Emperor, it was trembling uncontrollably in the distance, and it didn't even dare to make a sound. It had clearly been scared out of its wit. This man wasn't Little Mouse Enlin. This was Enlin Daddy. Chapter 1754. Lu Mingxian knew just how powerful the god-engulfing skeleton was. It had once forced him into a corner. However, never would he have thought that the powerful god-engulfing skeleton would be trampled underfoot by Enlin in the blink of an eye. Even though the god-engulfing skeleton had been severely wounded and had experienced a fierce battle, it shouldn't have been this weak. The only explanation was that Enlin was far too powerful. Furthermore, he was far more powerful than the god-engulfing skeleton. Enlin, if I hadn't been severely wounded during my battle with Lu Mingxian, you definitely wouldn't have, bam. Enlin's fist smashed into the god-engulfing skeleton's skull. Golden shockwaves shattered the earth within a radius of several dozen kilometers. The god-engulfing skeleton roared in pain. Enlin threw another punch. Who allowed you to speak? Bam! What are you screaming for? Bam! Ugh! The golden shockwaves from the collision shook the earth beyond recognition. Enlin activated his Earth Lotus Supreme skill and unleashed a relentless barrage of punches, battering the god-engulfing skeleton beyond recognition. The infernal Abyss Emperor trembled in fear as it tried to sneak away. At this moment, a sense of impending doom suddenly welled up in its heart. Infernal Abyss Emperor, you lowly ant! If you take another step away from me, I'll kill you first. Unlin's voice drifted over, causing the infernal Abyss Emperor to stiffen in fear. It didn't dare to move. At the same time, in a place far away from the battlefield, the power of the flying sword that carried Lu Qianhuan had completely dissipated. She was still immersed in the pain of losing her father. At this moment, there seemed to be an explosion in the distance. The explosion was like a golden star. Although she couldn't sense its power, it was easy to imagine that it was an earth-shattering battle. The direction of this battle. Lu Qianhuan's heart jolted. She discovered that the battle was taking place right where Lu Mingxian was. But hadn't Lu Mingxian expended all of his energy to save her? How could such an intense battle still be taking place? Lu Qianhuan gritted her teeth and looked toward the direction where the battle had erupted. Without any hesitation, she leaped onto her sword and flew toward the center of the battle. Although the chances were slim, what if Lu Mingxian was still alive? What if he was still alive? She was not willing to give up any hope, even at the cost of her life. Lu Qianhuan flew very quickly on her sword, and it didn't take her long to arrive at the battlefield. Then, she saw the most unimaginable and fantastical scene in her life. Her father, Lu Mingxian, was safe and sound in a huge protective healing formation. Elsewhere, Unlin was attacking the god engulfing skeleton from both sides in a frenzy. The powerful god engulfing skeleton was like a helpless lamb that had been forced into a corner. It frantically unleashed its power of the divine Tao to defend itself against Unlin's attacks, but it was still beaten beyond recognition. That's what you get for chasing me. Boom boom boom. How dare you mock me? Pa pa pa. Didn't you say I'm a little mouse? Now that you're being ridden by a little mouse, who the hell are you? Bam bam bam. Unlin was having a great time when he suddenly sensed a burst of energy approaching from the distance. He raised his head and saw a shocked woman in the distance. My God! Lu Qianhuan, why are you here? Unlin was pleasantly surprised. Unlin, it really is you. Lu Qianhuan's eyes shimmered, and her voice trembled slightly. I am. Unlin smiled and said, I'm here for revenge, and I even saved your father. No need to thank me, I'm just doing what I should. You're here for revenge as well? Lu Qianhuan was shocked. What a coincidence, I'm here for revenge as well. Unlin was also shocked. My enemy is the god engulfing skeleton. Who's your enemy? Lu Qianhuan's gaze swept across the battlefield. Then, she extended a slender, jade-like finger and pointed at the pitch-black two-headed monster that was rooted to the spot. My enemy is this, the infernal Abyss Emperor. It killed my mother. Unlin took a deep breath. Do these Void Spirit Tribe bastards like to kill their parents so much? Su Xiaolan's parents had been killed by a Void Spirit Tribe super mighty figure, and so had Lu Qianhuan's mother. Her father had also almost been killed by a Void Spirit Tribe super mighty figure. This was really... Boom! A bolt of golden lightning pierced through the air. The infernal Abyss Emperor didn't even have a chance to evade before its body was pierced by the lightning. Odd, it hurts! A large hole had been punched through its spirit body, and the golden lightning was still coursing through its body, destroying it in a frenzy. The golden lightning on Unlin's fingertip dissipated. Lu Qianhuan, the enemy is almost dead. You can go and finish him off now. The white-robed male's face was reflected in Lu Qianhuan's bright eyes, and she smiled. Thank you for your assistance, Juniorin. You're so considerate. She then turned her gaze toward Lu Mingxian, who was currently recuperating in the distance. Do you want to come along? Lu Mingxian looked at his daughter, who had left and returned. He felt somewhat rueful in his heart. After experiencing a life-and-death separation, he was already much more open-minded. He smiled and said, There's no need. I'll let you take my place. Lu Qianhuan nodded. She wielded her great ice sword and flew toward the infernal Abyss Emperor. Howl! You can't kill me. You have an unfair advantage. If you have the guts, fight me fair and square. The infernal Abyss Emperor struggled on the ground as it frantically tried to recover from its injuries. "Fight me fair and square?" Lu Qianhuan sneered. "If we fought fair and square, you would have already been killed by me." The infernal Abyss Emperor's voice faltered as it recalled Lu Qianhuan's stunning counterattack. If it weren't for the god-engulfing skeleton, its life would have been in grave danger. One black shadow after another stabbed toward Lu Qianhuan. Lu Qianhuan slashed with her divine sword, shattering all of the shadow attacks. The infernal Abyss Emperor was already extremely weak. Its current attacks posed no threat to Lu Qianhuan at all. Lu Qianhuan shattered all of the infernal Abyss Emperor's attacks as she walked toward the two-headed monster. Then, she stabbed her sword into its head. Ah! The infernal Abyss Emperor's body shuddered violently as a terrifying frost power tore at its body. "Do you still remember this sword? My mother forged this sword in the past," Lu Qianhuan murmured. She pulled out the great ice sword and stabbed it into the two-headed monster's second head. A blood-curdling wail sounded once again. "This is probably karma. My mother was killed by you because of this sword. Now I'll use this sword to kill you." Lu Qianhuan pulled out the great ice sword and stabbed it into the two-headed monster's head again. Not only did the razor-sharp frost power ravage the infernal Abyss Emperor's body, but it also sliced apart its consciousness bit by bit. Then, it was frozen solid, forcing it to endure the most terrifying frost torture. Lu Qianhuan stabbed the infernal Abyss Emperor a few hundred more times. In a moment of carelessness, she accidentally killed it. Rumble! Heaven and earth wailed in grief. Heaven and earth mourned the death of a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. Lu Qianhuan gazed at the dead infernal Abyss Emperor. Perhaps it was due to the influence of heaven and earth, or perhaps it was due to some other reason, but 2 streaks of tears flowed down her face. She stood in place with her sword in hand. Scenes of the past flashed through her mind. "It's all over. Huan has avenged you." Lu Qianhuan looked up into the sky, and her eyes became purer and purer. Anlin was just rubbing the god-engulfing skeleton into the ground when he suddenly discovered that the ground had transformed into a realm of ice. The frost power even extended to the god-engulfing skeleton's body. Boom! A blue pillar of light soared into the sky. The area within a radius of 50 kilometers instantly transformed into a realm of extreme frost. The power of the divine Tao threatened to freeze the entire heaven and earth. Anlin looked toward the female at the center of the pillar of light. He took a deep breath. "Lu Qianhuan, you've attained the divine Tao?" Chapter 1755. Qiu Hong's death had always been a thorn in Lu Qianhuan's heart. Due to this incident, even though she possessed the ancient sword Tao physique, she was still unable to wholeheartedly accept and love the Tao of the sword. This restricted her development in the Tao of the sword from another perspective. However, things were different now. She had successfully killed the person who had killed her mother. Furthermore, Lu Mingxian was willing to sacrifice his life for her, which made her understand many things. Everything in the past had come to an end. Lu Qianhuan's Tao heart had never been as pure and transparent as it was now. She could finally face her true pursuits. The woman caressed her flawless, azure divine sword with a vibrant smile on her face. "As expected, my favorite thing is still the sword. Even a young sorceress has grown up. I am now the peerless sword mistress." Boom! Sword intent soared into the heavens. The true intent of the Tao of the sword surged through the air. Even Lu Mingxian and Anlin, who had an extremely deep understanding of the Tao of the sword, were stunned by this. Streaks of blue, silk-like sword qi wandered around the woman's body in an extremely agile manner. Lu Qianhuan's body had already been draped with a blue sword intent immortal dress. The satin sash wrapped around her slender waist and wrapped around her long, snowy white legs. Her neck was like that of a swan, and her entire being was extremely graceful and graceful. Both her disposition and aura were elevating at the same time. Anlin was extremely gratified to see Lu Qianhuan's transformation. This senior sister could finally be her true self. This was very good. The phenomenon of her breakthrough lasted for a whole 15 minutes. Lu Qianhuan, who had attained the power of the divine Tao, finally stabilized her cultivation base at the return to void final stage. This cultivation base was already at the pinnacle of the kingdom of the 9 states. At the same time, she was one of the most powerful cultivators in the kingdom of the 9 states united army. Huan, you've done very well, Lu Mingxian said sincerely. A smile appeared on the man's face as tears welled up in his eyes. Lu Qianhuan faltered slightly at the sight of this man. Congratulations, Lu Qianhuan. Anlin hammered the god-engulfing skeleton a few times in celebration. Lu Qianhuan looked at the handsome man in the distance, and a beautiful smile appeared on her face. It's all thanks to Master Anlin's assistance. She took a step forward, and a fragrant wind blew over. Lu Qianhuan's peerlessly beautiful features appeared before Anlin's eyes. Her sharp oval face, her enchanting purple eyes, and her quivering lips caused Anlin's breathing to slow down. The cold elegance of a sword immortal and her natural delicateness perfectly blended together. Thus, the woman inched closer to Anlin and exhaled a fragrant breath. Junior student brother, how do you want me to thank you? The god-engulfing skeleton let loose an enraged roar after being ignored by the two of them. You're looking for bang. The golden energy vibrated. Anlin punched the god-engulfing skeleton again, sending it flying. Lu Qianhuan plunged her sword into the god-engulfing skeleton's chest, and ice and snow froze its power so that it wouldn't be able to interrupt them. It's nothing, senior sister, there's no need to thank me, Anlin said with a straight face. I see. Lu Qianhuan pursed her lips into a smile as she stared at Anlin with a scorching light in her purple eyes. She bent her long, snowy white legs and tapped the ground lightly with the tips of her toes. There was a hint of frivolity in her voice as she said, "But, senior sister has a bold idea." Anlin faltered upon hearing this. At this time, the woman in front of him had already opened her snow-white slender legs and approached him. Her sharp chin rested on his shoulder, and her impressive figure pressed against his body. Her jade-like arms wrapped around his body, and she hugged him tightly. This was not a light hug. Instead, it was a very forceful one, as if she wanted to pour all of her scorching emotions into this one hug. Thank you for saving me during my tribulation transcendence at the Immortal Spirit Tower. Thank you for giving me a home after I graduated. Now I still have to thank you. Thank you for saving my father, thank you for allowing me to exact my revenge, and thank you for allowing me to find myself again. The woman murmured in a low voice. Her ravings were soft and gentle. What do? I feel like I owe you more and more. I can't even repay you. Anlin could even feel Lu Qianhuan's slender fingers gripping onto his back. This was a cold and emotionless sword immortal who could cause snow to fall from the heavens with a single swing of her sword, but now she was as warm and gentle as a puddle of spring water. Could it be that you want me to say that I have no way to repay you and can only devote myself to you? Lu Qianhuan suddenly asked in a soft voice. Lu Mingxuan's eyelids twitched. The god-engulfing skeleton was completely dumbstruck. Anlin's heart jolted upon hearing this. At this moment, the scorching sensation in front of him disappeared. All that was left was a unique fragrance. Lu Qianhuan retreated a couple of steps before standing in front of Anlin. A mischievous smile appeared on her face as she said, "Forget about it. I have no way to repay your kindness. I can only repay you by being your slave in my next life." Anlin rolled his eyes. "There's no need for you to be my slave in your next life. Sword Immortal Lu, just live well in this life. When you become successful in the future, don't forget to take care of the 4-9 Immortal sect." The two of them exchanged a smile. At this moment, a peerless red glow suddenly erupted from the god-engulfing skeleton's body. The evil-slaying sword and the great ice sword were both instantly knocked flying as it tried to flee. Anlin slapped it into the ground again. Lu Qianhuan stabbed her sword into the god-engulfing skeleton's chest, and the power of extreme frost surged violently into its body to restrict its power. Let's take care of the god-engulfing skeleton first, Anlin said. A faint blush appeared on Lu Qianhuan's face as she nodded lightly. All right. Anlin felt like the god-engulfing skeleton wasn't going to give up. Thus, he immediately put a green turtle shell on its body. That's right, it was the intermediate rank divine tool, the Xian Wu Heaven Sealing Shell. This divine tool could be used to protect oneself after being charged. It could also seal the enemy's power and render them powerless. The severely wounded god-engulfing skeleton was being suppressed by this divine tool. In addition, Anlin and Lu Qianhuan were attacking it relentlessly from the sidelines. Its chances of escaping were basically zero. The god-engulfing skeleton's blood-curdling cries erupted from the battlefield again. It had to be said that the god-engulfing skeleton's skin was really thick. It was still breathing even after suffering so many of Anlin's attacks. Anlin, why aren't you finishing it off with your sword? You should be able to do that, right? Lu Qianhuan asked after slashing the god-engulfing skeleton a few times. I'm waiting for someone. Anlin chuckled and said, creating as much commotion as possible is how we agreed to meet. I'm hoping that she can detect the commotion here and come here to kill it with her own two hands. That would be more meaningful. But wouldn't that attract other Void Spirit Tribe enemies? Lu Qianhuan was a little concerned. Don't worry, I'll kill as many as they come, Anlin replied with a calm expression. Lu Qianhuan soon discovered that she had jinxed herself. 3 extremely powerful auras swept through the air. Looks like the lightning rat was right. There really are super mighty figures battling here. Isn't that the god-engulfing skeleton? I'm here to save you. Ha ha ha. How embarrassing, it's being crushed by Anlin. If the 3 of us join forces, we'll definitely be able to kill Anlin. Chapter 1756. Die. 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 A massive being that was as blue as an ice planet flew over from the distance. It had a pair of crimson eyes, and it let loose an eerie, deranged cackle. Just from its diameter alone, it was at least 300 kilometers in size. It blotted out the entire sky, and everything in its path was frozen in ice. If it were to crash into the ground, it would be able to completely obliterate a massive city. This was the Void Spirit Tribe's Tao Integration Intermediate Stage Supreme Being, the Demonic Frost Star. I can smell the scent of a powerful being. This is going to be my most delicious prey. An extremely short being that was about the same size as Tina chuckled as it flew over. It held a black trident in its hand, and there were densely packed golden protrusions on its head. As it walked, an extremely pure and holy golden light descended from the sky and enveloped its body, making it appear as the most dazzling being in this world. This being had an even more powerful background. It was the Void Spirit Tribe's Tao Integration Pinnacle Stage Supreme Being, the Soul Light Martial Emperor. God engulfing, you're in such a sorry state. If we had come any later, you might have died here. A super mighty being who looked like a gray monkey, who was standing on boundless crimson holy fire and holding a skeleton staff, grinned evilly with cold light beaming out of his eyes. However, leave the rest to us. We will avenge you. Anlin took a deep breath as he looked at the last super mighty being. Tao Integration Pinnacle Stage Supreme Being, Ember. Even the god-engulfing skeleton and Ember, who had killed Su Xiaolan's parents, had appeared. It had to be said that the heavens were really looking out for him. Anlin's expression gradually darkened. Come with me. He grabbed the god-engulfing skeleton, which he had tortured to the point of being unrecognizable. Then, he wrapped his arm around Lu Qianhuan's slender waist and stepped into the Karma Star Protection formation. The god-engulfing skeleton was tossed into the center of the formation. Lu Mingxuan's expression was extremely grave. 2 at the Tao Integration Pinnacle Stage, 1 at the Tao Integration Intermediate Stage, and a God engulfing skeleton at the Tao integration pinnacle stage. Half of the Void Spirit Tribe's top-tier combat power is gathered here. We should retreat first. Xiao Fu, transfer the sealing power to the God engulfing skeleton. Anlin commanded. Lu Mingxian froze for a moment. Don't worry, Master, I'll give you Xiao Fu. Xiao Fu kicked 7 large stars with a smile, pinning the God engulfing skeleton to the ground. Lu Mingxian, Lu Qianhuan, I'll leave the God engulfing skeleton to you too. As long as you don't kill it, you can torture it however you want, Anlin continued. Leave it to me. Lu Qianhuan licked her lips, and a vast divine power erupted from the great ice sword in her hand. She appeared to be itching for battle. She had just attained the power of the divine Tao, so she was perfect as a test subject. You're not going to run? Lu Mingxuan's eyes widened. Run? Why should I run? Anlin turned toward the 3 Tao integration stage super mighty figures who were charging toward him with menacing auras. Can't you see? What did you see? Lu Mingxian was perplexed. An extremely terrifying aura exploded from Anlin's body. He smirked and said, The 3 of them have been surrounded by me. Lu Mingxian. Lu Qianhuan's eyes rippled with excitement. How domineering! Anlin unfurled his wings of wind, and he soared into the sky. He then whistled through the air toward the 3 super mighty figures. Ha ha! Anlin, you've already been surrounded by us. There's nowhere for you to run. The demonic frost star roared with laughter. However, before it could finish laughing, it was suddenly given a fright. Holy F***CK. He's attacking us? Has he gone mad? Ember chuckled coldly. The Soul Light Martial Emperor raised its little black trident, and its battle intent surged. You've got guts. I'll give you a dignified death. 2 of them were at the Tao integration pinnacle stage, while the other was at the Tao integration intermediate stage. If they teamed up, they could easily dominate the Void Spirit realm. Unless a God of creation was present, they truly didn't fear anyone. Even if Anlin was very powerful, could he be more powerful than a God of creation? Since he wasn't, then he could only be beaten to the ground. Anlin activated his maxed-out Earth Lotus Supreme skill. His fist was imbued with the boundless power of Earth, and he ferociously punched out. Let me. All fists are useless in my eyes. The demonic frost star rammed into Anlin first. It was imbued with boundless kinetic energy, and a light collision was enough to destroy the world. At the same time, it was also imbued with boundless frost energy. Before it collided with an enemy's attack, it could continuously freeze and slow down the enemy's attack. However, this frost energy was completely blocked by a barrier around Anlin. Boom! The fist crashed down. A golden shockwave radiated outwards in a ring-shaped manner. It was as if a meteorite had crashed into a planet. The terrifying power of Earth instantly surged into the demonic frost star's body, which had a diameter of 300 kilometers. The demonic frost star felt pain spread throughout its entire body. Its gigantic ball-shaped body was actually sent flying by a single punch. Anlin was also sent flying by the recoil. He hadn't even stabilized his body when a speck of golden light flashed toward him. Then, an ordinary-looking black trident pierced through the void and pierced toward his waist. Ultimate Spirit Body, Soul Aurora. The Soul Light Martial Emperor unleashed a lightning-fast attack. The black trident's attack speed was extremely fast. It could be said that it was the fastest among all the Tao integration stage super mighty beings that Anlin had fought against. It was so fast that even in his current state, he couldn't keep up. Spirit bodies had already been freed from the restraints of the physical body. Thus, they possessed the ability to appear and disappear unpredictably. Moreover, the Soul Light Martial Emperor was a spirit body at the Tao integration pinnacle stage. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that its speed was the fastest below the God of Creation stage. When it unleashed its full power, It was absolutely impossible to defend against. The black trident pierced through Enlin's body of the war god. Blood splattered through the air, and countless dark curses suddenly started to spread from his wound. This black trident exuded the aura of a divine tool. It possessed an extremely frightening curse power. Enlin discovered that his wound was being continuously split and duplicated by a mysterious power. Then, this power started to wreak havoc on his wound. Not only did his wound not recover, but it even worsened. Heaven shaking holy fallen flames. A low chant sounded. Ember raised its skeletal staff high and completed its spell. A scarlet holy flame descended from the sky like a meteor. It traveled 100,000 meters per second and instantly smashed into Enlin's body. The holy fallen flames crushed Enlin into the ground, creating a nuclear explosion. A scarlet cloud of flames soared into the sky. The scorching holy flame transformed into a sea of blood-red flames that melted the ground within a radius of 50 kilometers. Even the atmosphere was distorted, making it seem like a purgatory. This is the most powerful flame technique that I've mastered. It's a holy flame that's superior to divine flames. Even the divine Tao can be instantly melted. Just like that, you'll be melted into ashes by my holy fallen flames. Ember's lips curled into a sinister smile. Right at this moment, a hole suddenly appeared in the scarlet holy flame. It seemed as if the holy flames of a certain nature were repelling each other. Ember's expression changed slightly. It's just a holy flame, and yet you're so pleased with yourself? Enlin raised his head, and a series of different flames suddenly burst forth from his body. Each and every flame exuded an essential energy fluctuation that struck fear into the hearts of the mighty figures in the sky. He waved a hand, and boundless holy flames suddenly covered the earth and sky. I'm going to show you what it means to be a man who plays with holy flames. Come out, 7 holy flames. Chapter 1757. Ember saw a scene it would never forget for the rest of its life. Saint flames of different attributes were released as if they didn't cost anything. Using heaven and earth as a furnace, they burned crazily. Its saint meteorite flame was also on the verge of collapsing due to the impact of the endless saint flames. What was a sacred flame? That was above divine flame, containing the origin of fire. It was a flame so pure that there were no flaws. It was the pinnacle of millions and millions of flames. Super Almighties would be proud to possess a flame of this level. But what about Enlin? He actually had a total of 7. Regardless of whether they were enemies like Ember, the Soul Light Martial Emperor, or the demonic Frost Star, or allies like Lu Mingxian, they were all given a fright when they saw that Enlin was actually able to unleash 7 types of holy flames at the same time. Vermilion Bird Holy Flame, Setting Moon Holy Flame, Great Sun Holy Flame, Blood Phoenix Holy Flame, Golden Dragon Holy Flame, Void Holy Flame, and Demonic Star Holy Flame. These 7 holy flames seem to contain the characteristics of all the flames in this world. With Enlin at the center, they incinerated heaven and earth. A thought suddenly arose in the hearts of all living beings. If there was someone in this world who could be called the Sovereign of Flames, then Enlin was definitely worthy of it. Ember was still in shock. At this moment, an invisible force suddenly appeared in the void. It was formless and silent, but it could incinerate everything it touched into nothingness. Ember's expression changed drastically. She struck the air with the skeletal staff in her hand, and a blue shield of divine light instantly formed in front of her. Rumble! The collision erupted at this moment. Formless energy surged through the void. The divine light shield was like a piece of ice encountering a raging fire. It actually began to rapidly melt and shrink. This was the power of the sacred void flame. Ember took a deep breath. I haven't reached this level yet. Before he could finish, a heavenly dragon roared. The golden flaming dragon pounced at Ember from the side. The crimson phoenix carried with it a tremendous amount of blood-killing power as it launched a pincer attack from another side. Behind the chrysanthemum, The pure white holy flame vermilion bird rammed violently with the power of extreme yang. Even above his head, a golden sun suddenly appeared and smashed down. Ember! Now that it was surrounded by 5 types of holy flames, there was no way for it to retreat. Rumble! The 5 types of holy flames exploded in the sky like the most gorgeous fireworks in the world. The scene was extremely spectacular, but it also made one's heart palpitate. It was also at this moment that a golden figure pierced through the sea of fire at an extremely fast speed. The pitch-black light carried with it an extreme killing intent. The Soul Light Martial Emperor made his move again. Unlin, who was releasing holy flames to deal with Ember, was at his weakest. It wanted to take this opportunity to kill him in one strike. However, it had only reached within a radius of a kilometer from Enlin when a blue flame suddenly engulfed the entire space around it, making it feel as if it were swimming in the deep sea. Not only had its speed been drastically reduced, but it was also being assaulted by extremely cold flames. Enlin instantly sensed the Soul Light Martial Emperor's presence. He turned his head to look at the Soul Light Martial Emperor and chuckled. You have a soul extreme constitution, right? But do you know that there is a kind of flame that can burn the soul, and it will never be extinguished until the soul is completely burned away? Suddenly, an extremely pure and rich great sun holy flame appeared in front of the Soul Light Martial Emperor. The Soul Light Martial Emperor accidentally came into contact with this holy flame. Sure enough, it felt an intense pain. This holy flame seemed to possess an extremely strong ability to suppress spirit bodies. It furiously tore apart its body and spread endlessly. It would be very dangerous if it tried to force its way through. The Soul Light Martial Emperor's figure faltered. Its entire body was engulfed in flames as it hurriedly retreated. The Great Sun Holy Flame was a variant of the Holy Vermilion Flame. It was even more suitable for dealing with souls. In fact, it could even be said to be the bane of souls. I'll smash you to death. The demonic frost star smashed down once again. The gigantic ball of frost dispersed the sea of fire and engulfed the entire sky. You are a small planet. Do you dare to take a strike from my starry sky palm? Enlin's expression remained unchanged. Purple flames rose from his palm, and it was as if there were countless stars flickering within the flames. The flames were the universe, and the stars were the sky. His palm was filled with demonic intent. Demonic star holy flame palm. Enlin slammed his palm toward the demonic frost star. Instantly, countless purple holy flames surged forth and condensed into a gigantic palm. The color of the palm was dark and gloomy, and there were countless stars within it. The power of the stars emanated from the palm was endless. Boom! Another earth-shattering collision ensued. The resulting shockwaves reached several hundred kilometers away. The demonic frost star felt as if its body had been struck by an endless number of meteors. The explosive power of these meteors could be said to be earth-shattering. The super-mighty being that was as large as a small planet let out a wail of anguish as its body was sent flying by another palm strike. If it weren't for the fact that its body was resilient enough, it would have been smashed into pieces by this palm strike. At this moment, the firework explosion that had been pincered by the 5 holy flames finally began to dissipate. Ember's figure appeared in the sky. A torrential divine light erupted from its skeletal staff. It was clear that it was getting serious. It panted heavily, and white smoke rose from its body. It gazed at Enlin with a fearful expression. The Soul Light Martial Emperor borrowed the golden light that descended from heaven and earth to dispel the holy flames on its body. The 2 people within the Karma Star Protection Formation were both dumbstruck. Who would have thought that Enlin could single-handedly suppress the combined forces of 2 Dao Integration Pinnacle Stage and 1 Dao Integration Intermediate Stage Super Mighty Figure? The rumors that Enlin is only adept at fighting heavenly gods and that he's not even at the Dao Integration Pinnacle Stage are all bullsh*. Lu Mingxian finally understood how frightening Enlin was. He was a freak that couldn't be measured by common sense. Lu Qianhuan's eyes lit up as she gazed at the man in the distance. Enlin's words are never pretentious. He's truly awesome. Xiao Fu didn't want to say anything. She had already been slapped in the face by Enlin's freakish strength many times. Enlin gazed at the three fearful Dao integration stage super mighty figures in the sky. He waved his hand, and holy flames surged and churned like living beings. He smiled calmly and said, "Do you see that? This is what playing with fire is like. This guy isn't easy to deal with." Ember's expression was grave. "He's much more powerful than I imagined," the Soul Light Martial Emperor chimed in. The demonic frost star finally managed to extinguish the flames on its body. Its body trembled as it said, "How about we escape? There's really no need to fight him to the death." "I agree," the Soul Light Martial Emperor said. "The risks and benefits are not proportional. If Enlin fights with his life on the line, I might be severely injured. It's not worth it." But God engulfing. Ember was a little hesitant. Boom. Right at this moment, an extremely dense and terrifying aura erupted from the ground. How laughable. Are you guys discussing whether or not to escape right in front of me? Have you forgotten that I've already surrounded you? Don't even think about escaping. Enlin stood in the sea of holy flames. He raised his head and a cold glint appeared in his eyes. "Ha ha! How laughable! How can you stop us if we want to escape?" Enlin wore a disdainful expression. "Setting aside the fact that we can escape in different directions, even if you chase after me alone, your speed won't be enough for me," the Soul Light Martial Emperor said calmly. "With your strength, you can only catch up to me at most," the demonic frost star said mockingly. "Wait, something doesn't seem right?" The demonic frost star immediately regretted its word. F***CK. "In the end, it seems like I'm the one in the most danger. If Enlin really wanted to catch someone to vent his anger on, then wouldn't it be the best target?" The gigantic planet started to tremble in fear. Chapter 1758. The god engulfing skeleton instantly panicked upon seeing this. "You can't run away. Even if it's not for me, think about yourselves. If you don't get rid of Enlin now, you'll be releasing a tiger back into the mountains. Think about it, only a few years have passed, and Enlin has already become so powerful. If he is allowed to continue to grow..." The god engulfing skeleton's words instantly brought the three Dao integration stage super mighty figures back to their senses. That's right, Enlin was already so awesome now. If he was given more time to develop, it was said that this guy was a vengeful character. This child's potential was terrifying. He definitely couldn't be allowed to live. "I also think we should fight," the demonic frost star chimed in. "If you want to fight, fight by yourself. I'll be leaving first." The Soul Light Martial Emperor couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. At its current cultivation realm, it could faintly sense death, urging it to leave this place. Demonic frost star. If the Soul Light Martial Emperor insisted on leaving, how could they possibly continue fighting? "I think you guys really don't care about what I said." Enlin looked at the three super powerful beings who were still thinking about whether to fight or flee, and sighed softly. "Now that you're surrounded by me, you really have no other way out but to fight to the death." With Enlin at the center, the boundless Saint Flames suddenly began to rapidly shrink, pouring back into his body. It wasn't just the Saint Flames. His body actually began to change. The pure holy flame fused perfectly with his meridians, flesh, and bones. His aura began to climb crazily. Regardless of whether it was the demonic frost star, Ember, or the Soul Light Martial Emperor, their expressions all changed drastically. "He even needs a secret skill to enhance his body?" Hiss. This aura, when they saw Enlin in this state, their eyes were filled with disbelief. This was Enlin's buff spell technique, Fire God Mode. No, perhaps it couldn't be called the Fire God Mode anymore. It should be called the Fire Sage Mode. The strength of this buff spell was directly related to the quality of the flames in the body. Previously, there had been 1 sacred flame and 6 divine flames. Now, there were 7 sacred flames. Yes, all the flames were holy flames. Whether it was in terms of level or quantity, they were incomparable to the past. Even the creator of this spell, the eternal Sun God, had never seen anything like this. The transformation of Enlin's magical technique could be said to be unprecedented, far surpassing the level of the patriarch. As for how strong he would be when he truly erupted, he had no idea. Unique patterns formed by the 7 types of holy flames covered his entire body. His eyes were like stars, there was a sun above his head, a setting moon below his feet, a pair of phoenix wings and a vermilion bird wings on his back, a golden dragon coiled around his waist, an invisible void armor covered his entire body. 7 gods set, fire dragon proud state. The soul light martial emperor's scalp went numb. Run. Let's split up, he won't be able to catch up. The demonic frost star was on the verge of tears. Please take me with you. You're too big. I can't carry you, the soul light martial emperor said indifferently. The demonic frost star looked down at its body, which was over 300 kilometers in diameter, and it wanted to cry again. The 3 Tao integration stage super mighty figures began to flee in different directions. Even a colossal being like the demonic frost star hurtled through the sky at an extremely fast speed like a meteorite after unleashing a mystic technique. The soul light martial emperor was extremely confident in its speed. If it wanted to flee, no living being below the God of Creation stage would be able to stop it. This continued until it saw a semi-transparent blue figure of Enlin appear before it at an even faster speed. A mocking smile appeared on his face. I've heard that your extreme soul physique is unparalleled in the void spirit realm? Enlin asked with a smile. The soul light martial emperor's heart jolted. However, before it could even react, it saw a golden soul sword materialize in divine sense in Lin's hand. This golden soul sword was sharp enough to slice through all souls, and the soul light martial emperor even felt a hint of transcendence. This was the White Tiger Holy Beast's soul-type killing spell technique, Soul Power Golden Sword. The Soul Light Martial Emperor used its small black trident to stab at Enlin's golden sword. It had originally thought that this would be an even match. However, an unimaginable amount of soul power instantly coursed through the black trident and spread throughout its entire body. The impact made it feel as if its body were about to be torn apart. Ah! The soul light martial emperor wailed in anguish as it was sent flying by the golden soul sword. What on earth is this? Aren't you a human, Enlin? How can there be such a powerful divine sense? The soul light martial emperor was astonished. This was the first time it had been at a disadvantage in a contest of soul power against another living being. Who said that humans can't have powerful soul bodies? Enlin sneered. You have to understand that I'm awesome in all aspects. The soul light martial emperor's extreme soul physique was indeed extremely powerful. It was enough to surpass all Tao integration stage super mighty beings. However, Enlin's divine sense couldn't be judged by common sense. He had first absorbed all of the soul power essence of the demigod Holmium spirit butterfly. Then, he had absorbed a wisp of the divine intent of the 4 holy beasts, as well as a large amount of soul power essence. Finally, he had absorbed all of the spirit patriarch's soul power inheritance. He had truly transformed into an extremely mysterious realm. In terms of divine sense, Enlin was already at the God of Creation stage. One could imagine what the soul light martial emperor had been through. It had been completely suppressed by Enlin. Trying to escape? That was impossible. It had already said that no one could stop it apart from a God of creation. In that case, Enlin would give it the power of a God of creation. Let's see what it could do. On the other side of the battlefield, after releasing his divine sense, Enlin's physical body, Enlin could still move on his own. Not only that, but he also maintained his peak condition. His power hadn't weakened in the slightest. Just how powerful was Enlin in his Fire Sage mode? He really didn't know. This was a good chance to test it out on Ember. Holy flames spouted from his feet, and he rapidly caught up to Ember. He arrived above his opponent, who was as skinny as a monkey, and punched it. Enlin's arms bulged. The 7 holy flames fused perfectly and circulated around his body. Then, he used the power of the flames to instantly unleash the might of his fist to its maximum. Qilin Arm, Fire Sage Fist. He used his full power right from the get-go. He wanted to use this strike to test his own power. Ember waved its skeletal staff and constructed a mysterious, crystal-like barrier. Bam! The barrier shattered like glass. Enlin's fist contained an extremely explosive power. It violently smashed through the barrier and hammered into Ember's chest. Ember's chest started to cave in, and its back bulged out. Then, an incomparably terrifying temperature melted its chest and pierced through it. Enlin's fist hammered a hole through Ember's body, pfff. Ember spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground. In the distance, the demonic frost star was currently fleeing. There was an expression of ecstasy on its face. Ha ha! As expected, I'm lucky. I thought that Enlin would attack me. I didn't expect that idiot to chase after the Soul Light Martial Emperor and Ember. He's too greedy. Who can stop a Dao integration pinnacle stage cultivator from fleeing with all their might? With how arrogant he is, he definitely won't be able to catch a single one of them. The demonic frost star chuckled as it paid attention to the battle behind it. In the next instant, it witnessed the scene of the Soul Light Martial Emperor being suppressed and Ember being smashed into the ground. This was like a nightmare. The demonic frost star was astonished. At this moment, the male who had caused countless chills to run through its heart actually turned his gaze toward it. If you continue to flee, I'll kill you first, the male said with absolute certainty. The demonic frost star knew that if it truly fled, the male would definitely do as he said. Just this simple sentence alone caused the demonic frost star, a mighty Dao integration stage super mighty figure, to stop in its tracks. It didn't dare to move at all, and Lin spread his hands open with a smile. See? I was right, wasn't I? You guys really have been surrounded by me. The 3 Dao integration stage super mighty figures were deathly silent. They discovered with great sorrow that although this sounded absurd, the 3 of them really had been surrounded by Enlin alone,